Fast food. Fuck, I'm running out of time. What are we gonna do? McDonald's? Dude, I want to get like something ridiculous. Double bacon quarter pounder with cheese meal. Dude, there's no way. You can order 40 McNuggets for fucking $13. Like, what the fuck? Order a nugget. Out of control. What the fuck is going on? I need to stop it. You're being weird. I need to eat. I need to eat. So 10-piece nugget meals, $9.50, or a 40-piece McNugget. The fuck is wrong with these people? We could do a 20-piece nugget. Spicy buffalo. Spicy buffalo. Okay, add to order. We're gonna go a little ham. I'm like kind of excited about it. So we're gonna do that and this. Large fries, Diet Coke for show. What does Diet Sprite taste like? No mustard, no onions or pickles. That's what's up. You know me, I don't even give a fuck. I pick what I want, you know? So that's all it comes with? Mustard, ketchup, onions, pickles. I don't want onions, pickles, or mustard. Like, who the fuck eats that nasty ass shit? Okay. Order is placed. Where are we at? Where are we at? Yo, what's up, players? Players and player haters. Ugh. It just. Yeah, that's better. Fuck it. We'll just throw it in the back. Throw it in the back. What's up, y'all? How we doing today? I'm fucking chilling. We open for business. Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna do the same shit today. Oh, first things first. Skirt. Turn that down. So yeah, welcome. We're just starting out. We're late again, but we're doing it tonight. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. For at least 4 hours. So we're going till 11. It's 7 p.m. right now. What I'd like to do is watch all of the rest of the videos of Dikko's tutorial series on modeling for animation. And then get into Blender and start actually fucking doing some shit. I'm hoping we get there. 4 hours is a lot of time. I don't know exactly how much time is left, but for example, we're on video 4 and video 6 is an hour by itself. So we may just be getting through the videos today and not actually getting into Blender, but um, regardless, that is the inevitability of the situation. So eventually we're getting into Blender and we're going to start creating our shit. The only reason I've decided to do it the way I'm doing it is because Dikko himself recommends watching the entire video series first and then also following along as like a secondary thing. So I also am like super hopeful that this is all a-okay and that what I'm doing is, you know, I feel like I'm creating my own content because what I'm recording and publishing isn't, I'm not trying to rip off his, I'm not even claiming his tutorial is mine. Like I want to stream my process of learning this. Um, if that means like my intentions aren't to monetize the videos, obviously. I'm not making any money off of YouTube or Twitch, so it's like I don't know if there's any like gray area there of like, yeah, it's fine. I see plenty of other fucking Twitch streamers watching YouTube videos, and I feel like I pause, I do my, you know, I commentate. So I feel like I'm doing, you know, the right thing. I feel like the right thing would have been to reach out to Dikko and ask like if it was cool, but um, I'm not anybody, so I feel like well, how's the saying go? I'd rather ask for forgiveness than approval or permission. Obviously, that doesn't work in all aspects of life. Enthusiastic consent, people. Fucking don't do it, okay? Don't fucking do it. Yeah, you know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you, motherfucker. Don't do it. Okay, anyway. Um, so there's like a little intro talk, pep talk. It's Lethal TTV. We need to go follow him back. Again, I'm not one for like the whole like, oh, follow for follow. I'll follow you if you follow me. But if a motherfucker follows me, he's pep talking me on Twitch. I'm not gonna be like, nah, motherfucker, you're done for. You're done for. Mm-mm. Hell yeah, he looks like an average Joe. He looks like a fucking skinny Seth Rogen. Oh shit. Damn, he's got 5K followers. That's nutty. Well, make that a little bit more. What the fuck? It's got TikTok. It's got a little about me, donate, YouTube. So like, yeah, this is like straight up. Oh, Marco, that's tight. For over 3 years and have a dream to go full time one day. The follow button. Turn on those notifs on. Maybe even sub. Also, don't be afraid to say something in the chat. Okay, sweet. Stupid. Dude, I can't wait to get back into Mako Ray's series though. If I ever get back, his like videos fun. He's fun with his videos. But anyway, gotta get these 6 streams pulled back up. 6 streams? What are you talking about? Yeah, I have six streams on the side that I'm trying to count as a viewer for, but I don't know if it counts or not. It is hard to tell, but I'm trying. I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to make sure that, you know, people are getting views. How much? I think more than half of the screen needs to be uncovered. I gotta start layering some of these videos though, because, well, like, he can go away. So maybe I don't. Just leave it like this and it's fine. Yeah, that's perfect actually. Okay, so let's just jump straight into video 4. I do have dinner on its way. So arrives between, so we're looking at about a 15-minute wait. So let's jump into video 4.
Finding
about halfway through
isn't easy.
We'll get
but
there.
At Upwork, we found
Wait,
her.
should I go ahead and do wait. Oh, because I need to go to wait. What the fuck? Oh, is it a web store? Fucking weird as fuck.
G'day everyone, Dikko here with another
What's up,
kick-ass
Dikko?
walkthrough. Today we
Kick-ass
are
is
continuing
true.
with part 4 of our
How are we looking on
multi-part
the volume
series
for this?
about modeling for animation. And by looking at the title, you know what we're going to make. We're going to make the hands. Now, word of warning about making the hands, it's a tricky process. There's a shitload of trial and error, and that includes me. And I will warn you when I'm about to make a mistake because I'll be rectifying it later in the video. And of course, here's what I've made earlier.
Oh,
and
shit.
as you can see, it's fairly stylized, but if you were planning on making a realistic hand, the underlying topology for the deformations can be easily sculpted to suit a realistic proportion. And the same thing goes for those who want to do even more stylized hands. Alright, so I have some video footage of my hand. Pardon the dryness, it looks a little bit wrinkly. I need to moisturize. Oh well.
Dude, his hand
So
looks
let's play it
similar to
back
my
and
hand.
have a look at
Except
the
his
deformation
fingers. What the fuck?
of
He's
our
got some
hand
plump
here.
ass fingers.
So we have the thumb. It can rotate and it squishes the skin. We have a splaying out of the fingers. You can see the wrinkling happen around the palm.
Oh yeah. Also,
Notice how we have some curvature in there in the palm. Where those
pause the
creases
music.
happen, where those wrinkles happen.
Interesting.
The way our hands rotate when we form a fist. And yeah. Now let's have a look at that with some annotation. Going back to frame 221, you can see that the thumb doesn't really sit parallel to the fingers on the same plane. It sort of sits at a 45-degree angle when it's resting. It sits like it's an opposable thumb, so it's opposing the direction of our fingers. So we have to think about how we model that. And there, just to reiterate, it's almost like a separate entity to the rest of our fingers. The fingers themselves are not the same length in terms of the distance between each knuckle. So the first knuckle is almost a third longer than the second knuckle, which is almost a third longer than the third knuckle. Did I say third twice? It doesn't matter. But you get the point.
I thought he said turd.
With the hand itself, the palm, we have a curvature in the palm. And we have a curvature of the wrinkling going up around toward the index finger, which is interesting. We can actually model that in there. to get that wrinkling. And of course we get that curvature in the thumb there. And you can see it becoming more and more obvious as my hand balls up into a fist. With the splaying out of the fingers, you can see that we have a bit of webbing going on. So we actually have to integrate that kind of compression and stretching into the webbing of the fingers so we can get a natural splaying going on.
Oh shit, stop it!
And with the knuckles, notice how the direction of the knuckles aren't completely straight. They're actually splaying backwards in different directions from the top to the bottom of the finger, which is interesting. And of course, when we splay out our fingers, they sort of fan out like a little bit of a fan. They're not in the straight direction. And of course, we're getting that wrinkling there toward the index finger.
Oh
the ring
shit!
Finger. Not ring finger. Middle finger. And of course, finally, we have some sort of mapping of the way that the hand is padded. So we have a bit of a dip in the middle. We have a pad at the the top of our hand where our thumb can sort of hit. We have the pad around the thumb, and then we have the pad opposite the thumb. So we can actually integrate that into our model as well.
Okay.
So with that little analysis out the way, let's jump right into Blender and start playing with our geometry.
In this club.
So here we have our model from the last tutorial.
Yeah.
And if
Boobies
you
and
recall,
ass, let's go.
building out the body,
Just kidding.
I
Art.
specifically
This is
wanted
art.
to create
This is
a
artistic
arm
purposes
that had
only.
12 spans that go around the length of the wrist. And those 12 spans will form the basis of our hand. And this is why being a little bit technical really helps when it comes to building things quickly, because now I know that these spans, these 12 spans, can form the basis of my entire palm. So I extrude out, I squish it down, and then I just basically fill in the gaps. So starting from the middle, I'm going to fill in some gaps there. And then to fill those little triangular holes, I'm going to create a span in the middle of that palm, and then merge to center on each side. And notice how I have now 4 groups of quads that will end up being the basis of my 4 fingers.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just
okay.
cleaning things up a little bit, straighten things out to make life a little bit easier when we extrude out those fingers. Alright, now it's time to build out the webbing of the fingers before we extrude them out. And this is a pretty straightforward process. Just bevel out a little span there. Make sure there's 2 spans. Alright, then we just delete those edges that form those little triangles. So we're just going to delete those center edges so we can maintain that quad structure. So just dissolve those. And now we have to create a loop that removes that n-gons between the hands. So we're going to create a loop that joins up the corners of those little triangles.
Interesting.
This will help keep the form of the hand and maintain that quad structure. Now, by using the knife tool, I find that since 2.8 came out, the knife tool hasn't been as good as it used to be. So you may have to merge vertices after the fact here. So if you're getting this issue here, just delete that edge and then select all your mesh and then go merge by distance, and that will get rid of any overlapping verts that may be there. Alright, now you can just extrude out the fingers. Boom. Alright, so now we just add a few loops in the palm because we need to start adding some geometry to those fingers. So before I start on the fingers, I'm going to delete a edge loop between the wrist and the fingers and then add the edges. Reason I'm doing that is because I don't want those spans to travel up the wrist and up the arm. But now that I have some extra geometry to play with on the fingers, I can collapse those edges on the top and bottom of the palm. So at this point, it's really important to understand where it's best to collapse the edges. So in my case, I'm going to collapse the edges.
I feel like this is like I'm just watching it right now, and obviously like whenever we get to this point, I'll be rewatching this probably on the other monitor while I'm trying to do it. Oh, McDonald's is on its way. Fuck yes. I'm gonna chow the fuck down. But right now, this seems like super complex. And I was even thinking about like stopping where I'm at right now and like going back and doing like videos 1 through 3 and just like getting caught up within Blender. But I'm going to be doing that anyway. So there's no real rhyme or reason to like, no, I'm not going to watch the full series. Because he recommended to watch the full series. So it's like, I don't want to like go against the instructor's recommendations. But I feel like I'm getting like way in over my head. Like I don't know if I know I could do this. Like I can click the same buttons he's clicking, but you know, I don't know. We'll see.
At these points here and
Bullshit.
here. And then I'm going to delete those edges at the edge of the palm and then delete the edge that form those 2 triangles. So now I'm effectively
Motherfucker's name is
redirecting the
Donald.
flow of
What?
the hand.
Donald delivering from
And I do
McDonald's.
the same on the bottom of the hand just at the moment to keep consistency, and it makes it easy to organize. So by doing this, I'm still maintaining that 12 edge structure at the end of the hand. So now I can just fill in that gap, and now I have a perfect fill process. And again, just at the top of the hand, I delete those edges on those triangles on the bottom of the hand. So right now the top and the bottom are practically identical. But that's about to change as we start to fill out the thumb and organize the bottom of the palm. So right now I'm just adding some spans to maintain some volume for the future. And now it's time to extrude out the thumb. Now I'm getting to the point where I start making a mistake, and I'll let you know when that happens. But right now we're doing okay. So notice that I've chosen faces that sort of sit at an angle of the fingers. So I'm creating that opposable thumb, essentially. So I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit, and everything's going perfectly well until I get to around this point. So up until here, you're good to go. But when I start to extrude this thumb, just ignore what I'm about to do, because we're going to fix it again in a few minutes. So I'll explain what's going wrong. So what I'm about to do, I'm about to do the right thing here at first, but then I do the wrong thing. I select these faces instead and extrude. And what I've accidentally done, to be honest, is created too much geometry at the front of the palm, which is going against my whole theory of modeling for compression and elongation. So now I actually have not enough geometry at the back of the thumb, and then too much geometry at the front of the thumb near its base.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the rest of the hand is fine, and we can start to add loops around the palm where we need it. So we need it around where the first knuckle.
Okay, so like if something's collapsing on itself, so like the inside of the elbow, the back of the knee, you need less geometry there because it's going to start out stretched. And so that's like the maximum. So when it creases, you don't want a bunch of extra geometry pinching and mashing into itself. Same with the thumb. The thumb's going to fold inward. So you want not as much geometry here, but you want it back here, because wherever it's stretching, you want more geometry. Wherever it's compressing, you want less geometry. Okay.
It sits. We need it sort of along the palm as well. So
that actually makes fucking sense.
And now we can start sculpting and sort of filling out the volume of the hand a little bit. So even with this crappy thumb, you can see that we can start to fill out and sculpt out the form of the hand a little bit better. So overall, it's looking pretty good so far. And soon we'll start to work on those fingers in a little bit more detail. So remember when I talked about the 3 different kind of padded areas around the palm? Now is the time to sort of start building that out. So I'm actually going to use the knife tool to redirect the edge.
So I've started eating healthy, and I'm noticing that like my body is feeling drained as fuck. Like super fucking drained after work. And I think it's because I've completely stopped eating carbs, like bread basically. Like every day for lunch I've been eating like a spinach spring mix salad with paleo chicken. I don't know what it is. That's just what Whole Foods has it marked as. It's like paleo chicken. So I'm thinking it has to do with some sort of like paleo diet marketing stuff. and some Parmesan cheese. But what I didn't realize what I was going to be doing is like completely cutting out carbohydrates or like a good source of them. Somebody told me that like vegetables have carbs in it and whatnot, but I think what I'm missing out on is like my body's used to having like these fast go-to like bread carbs that are just like easily digested and like boom pumping me full of energy. And I've like no more of that. I've like cut down on fast food, and now it's like, oh, my body's so slow to do anything.
Edge flow structure and the quad structure to give us some more volume on that, other side of the hand. And you
Oh,
can
nice!
see
It's
here
here.
the knife tool is
BRB, grabbing this grub. Dude, Donald from McDonald's dropping off my Donald's. You know that I like it, yeah. Wish that you could have it, but you can't. No, no, but you can't. Y'all. Woo! It's that a family of one. It's a family of done. I'm eating this. Ooh, I ordered a medium, but they gave me a large fry. No, it looks like I ordered a large. They gave me a large drink too. And I don't think that was accidental. We don't just be giving shit away. Nobody makes money, they just give shit away. And I'm about to eat an extraordinary amount of food, y'all. Probably shouldn't. I should probably stick to it. Yeah, I was talking about my diet and whatnot. But it's kind of like a cheat day, if you will. Man, imagine if, like, you got cheat days in relationships. I guess some people do. Those people don't stay in relationships for very long. Oh my god. I'm like I think it is the carbs. Like my brain, like looking at the bread on this hamburger has my brain being like, eat it. Oh my god, eat the bread. Just eat the bread. Fuck everything else. Just eat the bread. Okay, sorry. Give me a second. I want to get this prepped. I don't want too much interruption going on with the video. Louis, just don't even fucking worry about it, bro. Just don't worry about it. You don't need to get up here. You don't need to get up here at all, actually. Not even just for a little bit or a second or at all. Literally at all, you don't need to. Okay, we'll hold off on that. I'm gonna just take a bite. Alright.
causing a little bit of strife for me, but
So good.
once we fix that up and clean up that edge flow, you'll start to see what I'm about to do. So clean that up, and then I'm gonna just just to test to see where that redirection's going. And you can see it's starting to do its thing, but I got some errors, so I'm just going to merge the distance and get rid of those overlapping verts. And if we inspect that edge flow, you'll see that I've effectively created those different sections. So with the palm largely out the way, we can actually start to work on the fingers in more detail. So I'm going to use the loop tools to sort of circularize my quads at the start of the fingers. And they kind of look more finger-like now already. And depending on what kind of style of hand you're going for, you may want to scale up and down certain, shapes of those, that circular shape. And I'm just roughly sort of getting the length of the fingers out to the right length. And again, I'm going to sort of smooth out the shape at the base of the fingers as well. Sort of circularize that, smooth it out, that sort of thing. Because we've largely got the structure of the hand.
How the fuck does he have the ring finger? Oh, wait, what the fuck? How have I not noticed this before? The ring finger's longer than the index finger? What the fuck? I didn't know that.
Out the way
I
already.
was about to talk shit on him about it. Now I realize I'm the
So
fucking
now it's
idiot.
just a little bit of tweaking involved.
Oh, you can't be a tweaker, bro.
I'm not adding any extra geometry at the moment. I'm just playing with what's already there. And again, just fixing up that webbing a little bit, scaling it, smoothing it. So you can see just by scaling down those two verts, I kind of get that webbing effect already.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's add those loops once we're good to go. Alright, so obviously every finger has two knuckles along the finger, so we add our two spans to represent those knuckles. And we kind of get the proportions right, roughly speaking. So we want to get the tip of the finger to be shorter than the middle of the finger, and then the middle of the finger to be shorter than the first
Base.
span of the finger.
The base of the finger,
We're just
bro.
adding some structural loops now. And then I'm going to grab my spans that represent my knuckles. Just the top of
Forgot. The fucking CloudBot won't initiate until at least one thing is typed in the chat. Initiate. Now we're cooking. That should start getting those timer triggers to go off. Okay, I gotta reorganize this shit. Beep boop pop. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that works. 4, and then 5 was up there. Weird. Okay.
them, not the whole circle. And then I'm going to bevel out some extra geometry that will represent the extra skin of the knuckles.
Mm-hmm. Again, it makes sense.
Alright, I then merge
Where it's going to be stretching,
some verts
the top of
to
the
clean
knuckles,
up that
you want
geometry
extra
and avoid any
geometry?
end-gons.
and you don't need that extra geometry
So I'm
in
just
the
merging to
creasing
last.
or the compression
Do that
areas.
across all your fingers.
It's fucking brilliant. Ooh. Wait a second. Very nice. Now it should initiate. So I don't think it counts me as
Like
being one
so.
of the chat lines, maybe? I don't know. But it's also all on timers, so maybe the
And
timer
then
doesn't start
once
until
you've
the
done
first
that,
chat.
delete those spans that join those triangles. So we're going to effectively redirect the edge flow or the face flow around the top of the knuckles. As you can see, I missed a little piece there, so I'm going to fix that in a second. So merge
This
that
is like
one
the same
as
thing you
well.
did on the knees,
All
the
right,
elbows.
so let's have a look at the edge flow. We got some edge flow that sort of flows forward around the hand. So we're getting that redirection going on. Obviously, there's a few niggles here and there, so we got to fix those up. Yep.
I don't know what the fuck he's saying when he says that, but, it
ultimately,
sounds
this
very
is all
bad.
you kind of need to get an effective finger going on. And then, as I said, there's a little bit of distance between the top and the bottom of the knuckle that isn't perfectly straight. So I'm just sort of simulating that by redirecting the edge at the bottom of the fingers. This will help the fingers sort of deform a bit better and more realistically
Okay.
when we rig it with testing.
I understand.
Then
I
I'm just
understand.
adding a few more structural loops around those knuckles. Like so.
Ooh. Louis, Howie, you guys are so stupid.
And this may be
Making them
getting
going
that
to
padding
even
looking a little bit
have
better.
a
So
chance
now
to get
basically
any of
it's
this
all about
McDonald's.
just playing
Donald
with the
said
existing
no.
geometry.
Donald said, "I'll deliver
and
it
getting
to
the
you, but
form
you don't get
need
none."
for your particular hand design.
Howie, I don't want you in
So
my lap
obviously
right
there's,
now,
you know,
so
all
stop
kinds of
it.
different hands you can design. So now it's really about just manipulating what's already there. You don't have to add any more sort of geometry to those fingers for the time being.
Okay.
It's just about blocking out the form, getting it to the way
you
you
did
want.
that so quick, and it looks
just
so
really
fucking
playing with
good.
it.
I wonder at what point he fixes the thumb. You said like a little bit later, but like we're almost at the end of
As
the
you can
video,
see,
bro.
I'm kind of giving it a little bit of taper. Realistically, though, you know,
never mind.
fingers don't
Oh,
really
just over
taper all that
halfway.
much, but for like a feminine hand in a cartoon, I kind of feel like it works.
Okay.
But you don't have to follow me here. You can do it to any design you like. So I'm just really just manipulating what I need for my particular character.
Howie, bro. The older he gets, just the more fucking like a dick he gets.
And you can see here,
like,
I'm
stop- he's
basically,
like a
I'm
honey
not
badger,
adding
stop
any
giving
extra
a fuck, you
verts,
know?
any extra geometry. I'm basically just really working my way through creating the volume that I need
Dude,
with
it's
the
gonna be
existing
exciting.
geometry. Because most of it's there.
Like
I
I
don't really
feel
have
like
to
watching
add
this,
all
like
that
I can
much
do
more.
this. Like obviously I can do it.
You know, you can see the form take hold.
Anybody
basically.
can do this.
So just play
Download
with what's
Blender,
already
watch
there,
this
and
tutorial,
don't
boom,
add
you can
extra
animate,
complexity where you
you
don't
can
need
model
it.
and
Especially
animate a
if you're going
video
for something
or
that's
a
a lot
fucking
simpler
character.
than this hand, for instance. You know, if you're going for something more, you know, bubbly or, you know, balloon-like, you know, you don't want to add extra complexity. You might want to get rid of some. So notice how by elongating the edge flow down the side of the palm that leads up to the pinky, that I'm able to fill out that padded area on that side of the palm. So jumping into edit mode, I'm just going into soft select, and I'm going to create that little bit of a bend in the bottom of the palm. So naturally you get, like, you have a bit of a bend between the fingers.
Wait, what if I do
inside the
poggers?
palm? We're getting that little dip.
Aw.
If I subdivide that, it's looking okay. It looks a bit bubbly at the
How do
top.
you get
So
those?
again, more editing required. Just pushing and pulling those verts. And then I've made the decision to
fuck?
elongate
Why do
the
you go
edge flow
offline,
down
Rex?
to the base of the wrist rather than at the top. Because this will help me sort of fill out that metacarpal area and get that dip in that I like. So I'm just, it's the same structure, it's just a bit further down the hand. So I'm not really doing too much differently here.
Okay.
And again, I may have to merge by distance to get rid of any overlapping verts, which is really annoying, but what are you going to do? And then just clean up as needed. And you can see I forgot to delete one edge, but I do that later on, so make sure you delete that one edge that causes that triangle there. And again, just manipulating geometry, getting that dip in near the start of the knuckles, making that look a little bit more realistic. And again, not playing with adding more geometry, just playing with what's existing. Alright, let's go fix up that goddamn thumb. So what I've done, I've kept that loop, and I'm going to refill to the point where I was earlier in the video. So the same grid structure. Alright.
See?
So instead of extruding from the back, I'm going to extrude from the front.
That's what she said.
And you'll see why.
I see that's what God said, right?
So by extruding from these faces, I'm effectively creating a knuckle at the base
The man
of the thumb.
who'll extrude him from the front.
And I
Backwards
switch on
facing
normal
penis just won't
orientation
work.
so I can extrude straight. Just going to extrude that out in a second.
He could have
Just
made it
getting ready
work.
to do that.
If anybody, God could
And you can
have.
see I'm getting that extra geometry at the back
Oh,
of the
no.
thumb rather than at the front. So I'm just going to extrude that, smooth it out, and form my first or the second knuckle of the thumb. So I don't know if you guys realize we have 3 knuckles in the thumb. The first one's just at the base of the wrist. Alright, just getting that into place, playing with the proportions. That's looking pretty good to me.
This is out of control.
Just inspecting, just making sure it's all good. Alright, extrude out that thumb one more time to get that second knuckle in, or third knuckle rather. And just sort of make sure that it's sort of in line with the proportions of your hand. So I always fall into the trap of making the palm too big and the thumb too far down the hand. So just look at your own hand, look at some reference, and just see where that thumb sits in relation to the fingers and the palm.
Yo,
So rotating that just to
no, you're right. Something interesting, random, or do a little dance. I don't want to talk, so do a little dance. Do a little dance. Oh yeah, back it up. Do a dance. Do a little dance. Clap your hands. Clap your fucking hands. That's good enough. Ooh.
get the structure looking okay.
Hey, who knows? Maybe I'll get good at dancing too. Ooh. Who knows? We'll get that
really
dumpy on
just about
screen
just
more
manipulating
often.
the proportions to suit your character design.
Big boy booty.
And getting the proportions of the thumb is really difficult at first. So that's why testing and seeing how it deforms is really important. See how it works with your hand. And as we get into the sort of testing phase, I'll talk that through. But basically, we create
up,
a
dumbass?
very simple hand rig based on the Rigify plugin, and then we'll sort of manipulate that, and you can see what works, what doesn't. Disable the rig, fix up the hand, rebind, and just repeat that process. So as you can see here, I'm just getting that structure down pretty early before I add any more detail.
Ooh, my body's like converting this shit to energy already. I can feel it. I don't feel so tired
As you can
anymore.
see, I do a lot of rotating around the thumb.
So it's
I'm trying to
carbs,
get
man.
that right from the get-go.
Carbs and empty
So
calories.
if you're having trouble with
Sometimes
the
you
thumb,
need
don't
that shit.
be discouraged. It does
my
require
body
a bit
was
of trial
not
and error.
able
And
to
every
operate.
time I make a new hand from scratch,
With what I had provided it. Alright, Howie, come here. You get to be featured on the streamers. Oh my goodness, Howard, how are you doing? Him wanted a French or fry, but Dabber said no. I love him. Even though you get hair on everything. Oh, can't jump out of my arms like that. Time is it? You guys have 10 minutes. 10 minutes and then can eat their snack, okay? Can you guys wait 10 minutes? No. Of course not, Dabblers. 10 minutes is too longers, huh? You'll be fine.
I
After this
always fuck
video.
up the thumb.
Okay,
in
I
some
won't
way or
pause
another.
anymore.
It's not because
No more
I don't know
pausing.
what I'm doing. It's just, it just happens. It's really just what happens when you're doing something as complex as a hand.
Okay.
And again, just, you know, fleshing out the
Nobody
structure,
knows what
getting
it
the
means.
form right
Fuck.
before I go into more detail. So I'm deciding where I'm placing the knuckle, because it's really important, because I'm thinking about how the thumb is opposing the other fingers. So in my case, I'm going to keep it in line with that first knuckle you see at the base of the wrist, that change in direction. So here I go, I'm going to add a bevel just like the other fingers on both the knuckles of the thumb, and I do the same process as I did before. So merging those verts to last, doing the same on every knuckle part, and then I add a span in between the knuckles basically. So add that span, and that's basically it. That's the structure of the hand in a nutshell. And if you wanted to right now, this is good enough to start animating with. You can actually rig this up and work your way through it. But if you want to take some time to revise the structure, work out the design of your hand, make sure it's appropriate for your character, yeah, go for it. And that's what the next kind of 5 to 10 minutes is all about in this video. So it's all about really just making sure that the proportions work for my hand, for my character, and we'll go through the process of adding a very basic rig to my hand in a moment. And as you can see, I'm just fleshing out the structure, sculpting things in where I need to, making sure there's no niggly bits, no bumps, no bruises that, you know, can affect the deformation
I
of my
fucking
hand.
like when he says that shit. I need to Google it. Probably shouldn't. Oh my god, I would never fucking say that. No way, whatever. So it is a word, and it just means like causing persistent anxiety or discomfort. So it's like not really like it. I don't know what.
And you
in
can
the
see here,
context he's using
in my
it, doesn't
opinion,
make
the
any
thumb looks a
sense.
little bit broken, so I'm just sort of like making sure it's straight, easy to
I was
rig,
like, why are
and
you
easy to
saying it
deform.
then?
So that's all I'm doing. I'm not adding any extra geometry at this point. It's all about just manipulating what's already there, just like before. So this part of the process is pretty much optional. You can always do this if you want to, but you don't have to. So what I'm doing is I'm basically getting the Rigify Meta Rig, deleting everything except the hands, and then realigning the bones in the armature edit mode to suit my hand. And I'm keeping it quick here because this video isn't meant to be a rigging tutorial. This is just showing you my method for sort of testing out my hand structure, making sure the deformations work and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm basically doing is just going to realign all the joints of the Meta Rig hand to suit the structure of my hand, and basically just, you know, make sure it's deforming as I want. And you can see as I start deforming it, you know, you learn a lot about what's working and what's not working in your hand structure. You know, where you're placing your fingers, where you're placing, you know, the curvature of the hand, the thumb, all that sort of stuff. So it's really important to test things like this, but, you know, you don't really have to do it, you know, necessarily in this way. You can always just eyeball it, make sure you're using your reference a lot better, make sure, you know, you're getting the proportions right, because ultimately it will work out in the end. The structure's there, the rigging structure's there for, you know, in terms of the mesh. This is just really a bonus thing you can do to sort of really flesh it out and make sure everything's working to plan. So as you can see, I'm just snapping the bones to the volume of my hand structure.
Boning was one of my favorite things to
just,
do
you know,
in college.
Really roughly putting it in there. And then I just get out of snapping mode, and I'm just moving the knuckle joints up a little bit above the center line of my fingers volume. And that offers much better deformation. That's a little tip for you, even though this is not a rigging tutorial.
True, the tension is at
Realigning
the top
bone
of the
roll,
hand,
making
not
sure
the
that's all
base,
good,
right?
and then just binding my mesh to the rig, giving it a go, testing it out in animation, and what you're seeing here in the time lapse here is basically me animating the hand as you saw it at the start of the video. So it's giving me a lot of information about how it's deforming, what I need to fix, the location of the knuckles. You can see I'm realigning things. I'm playing with the scale of the fingers, both in the rig and in the mesh, making sure all that's
Damn, that's
working.
dope.
Seeing how it's deforming and just working my way through that process. And I don't know if you noticed, but this is using the thumb that I fucked up at first. So there's a little bit of extra volume at the start of that thumb, which I eventually come and fix. At the same time, when testing, I'm also making sure that it's not just my shitty animation that's making the deformations look bad. It's about, you know, a bit of everything really. Just testing the animation, testing the form, testing the structure, and just, you know, seeing how everything's working. And as you can see there, I fixed up the fingers a little bit there. You know, reposition the bones,
I
make
know,
sure they're in
Louis,
the right
it's almost
position, because the
snack
position
time.
can really make a difference. So I noticed through my animation that I actually wanted some
Oh,
more
Dad,
creasing
it's
in the
snack
palm.
time.
So I've actually beveled out another set of edge loops
6
at the
minutes.
base of the palm, around the thumb. So I just beveled out that. And I'm just merging the verts where appropriate, avoiding any 6 poles or stars. So there and there are pretty good places. And then just adding a loop in between those 2 triangles to get that palm to have an extra creasing there. And just manipulating those verts a little bit. Then it's back on to testing. So I'm just going to rebind. I subdivide it and you can see the creasing happening in both the top and the bottom of the palm based on my edge flow, which is really cool. Just cleaning that up a little bit, fixing things, you know, etc. And back to it. Okay, eventually you're going to get happy with the way your hand is looking. So now it's time to reattach this thing back to the body. And if you did things correctly, it should be a pretty simple affair. So I've just brought back the geo from my my mesh. I'm going to line up the hand with the base of the wrist. And then I'm going to delete these spans at the base of my hand. Alright, so I'm just going to bring that into place. And then I select my hand and my body and push Control J to join the hand to the body. Alright,
Yes,
and if
indeed,
you recall,
that's
we
what you
had
did.
12 spans around the wrist and 12 spans around the hand. But first, we need to sort of rotate the mesh of the wrist around a little bit to represent the curvature of the forearm down the arm. This is really useful for rigging, by the way. Alright, so just line those up. And then we can just start merging faces, basically. Just use the F tool to fill in the spans. So, here we go. I'm just inspecting my hand hole there. 12 spans. 12 spans. And let's start filling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yay! No issues whatsoever. And this is basically why I do things the way I do. Obviously, some people can look at this and go, why the fuck do you want to plan it so much? But for me, it just saves time. It makes life easier. You know, with just 12 spans, you can make an entire hand, reattach it with no issue whatsoever. As long as you understand your edge flow, the structure, and how to build out something with very simple beginnings, you can get an amazing result.
True. It is amazing.
So I'm just
fast.
realigning the normals, just smoothing those out,
I guess
making sure the normals aren't
time
flipped.
more part of it.
That's all good. And now we can kind of just give it a quick little run through Mixamo, because Mixamo actually does let you test out hand animation. So that's going to be kind of fun. That looks pretty good proportion-wise as well. Alright, jumping into Mixamo. I'm just processing that rig again. Here it goes. And you can see the hands are doing its thing. It's pretty cool. You know, the fingers are moving, thumbs moving in the same space. The proportions look pretty good in my opinion for this character. And now you can just keep on testing, playing around with it, add some motion capture. And yeah, let's have a look. So let's try and find some animation which involves some decent hand movement. Yeah. I think this one will be alright. You can see it's manipulating those hands pretty good. We've made a lot of progress in 3 videos or 4 videos, haven't we?
Yeah, hell yeah, we have.
There you go, you can see the little hands clapping away. Oh, it loves using hands. Oh, look at it, so happy. So yeah, that's how you kind of make hands from scratch using only 12 spans from your arm. And you can get an amazing amount of detail. So next video, we're going to start doing the really fun stuff, which is sculpting the face. So until then, catches and have fun.
Catches later. All right, let me go feed these fucking cats. What's up, Hamilton? Oh, just continuing on our fucking tutorial spree here. I gotta go feed these cats real quick, but I will BRB. Here's some tunes to hold you over. Oh, shit. Careful for DMCA shit. It'll dodge my VOD, but it might not dodge yours. Alright, boys. Let's go. Come on. Come on, Lulu. What happened to your eye? Ruru, what's wrong with my eye? Why are you closing your eye? Why aren't you coming for snack time? Ooh, you're chonkers. Say hi to Hamilton. Hi, Hamilton. My name's Ruru. I love JC Face. Ugh. Alright. I want to make love. Alright, boys. It's snack time. Howdy, it's Snacker Backer Booze. Snacker Backer Booze. I want to make love in this club. Love in this club. Love in this club. Yeah. Love in this club. Love in this club. Yeah. How I hold it. Oh, let me just write this down. Yeah. We carry fruit with your small street food and a lot. Oh, it's snacker, necker, nap time. It love you them snackers. It love them so much. Yes, we do. Ah, muy buenas. Whew. All right, they're going. Hell yeah. Look at my little fucking, look at my little timer notes going. Like, oh, click here, click there, click everywhere. I ain't no follow back, boy. All right. That was quick. Oh, hell yeah. TikTok's nutty. Actually, people at work have found my TikTok and they're like, "You need to make more." Like, you seem to like have a natural. You seem to like have a natural whatever it's called for. I can't think of what it's called. A natural something. But it's like hard to come up with ideas. I've been like trying to think of ideas and shit. It's just like I don't know. I just need to spend more time like fucking with the app and like figuring out shit. But okay.
Hey everyone,
honestly,
Dikko here with another.
I'm not modeling a face, but we are modeling a head. So let's just watch it.
Kick-ass walkthrough. This is part 5 of a multi-part series
Part
that
5,
covers
let's go.
modeling for animation. Today, we are going to sculpt the face. And this episode's a little
How's,
bit different
Rocket
to the other
League
ones
going?
because it's a lot more
Are you not doing Rocket League
fluidic.
anymore?
And that's because we don't really have a real technical base to work off of. It's a lot more subjective in its approach, basically. And before we move on, here's what we're going to create. We're going to start with this base mesh and then work our way into creating a character that kind of looks like this. So as you can see, I'm not going with full realism here. I'm going for stylization. I'm going for my own style here. So whatever you're going to make, adapt it to your own style. And there's a million ways in which you can make a character face. And everyone has their own approach. Everyone has
What,
their
you
own
beat
style.
him and you got mad or
Everyone has their own
something?
methods. And really, it's up to you to find what is comfortable for you. So before we get started, I want you to make sure you have this add-on installed or turned on.
It's like,
it's
fuck
called,
you, I'm leaving.
Extra
No.
objects. So just find that in your add-ons list in Blender. It's already installed. It's just a default add-on that you need to turn on.
Default
And
add-on.
then we're going to create
okay.
a round cube. And
Round
open up
cube.
the properties tab and just adapt it so it sort of turns into a spherical shape. Like so. And then just scale it down to fit the proportions of your face. So what we're effectively doing here is that we're creating a sort of base to sculpt upon with these basic shapes. So we're just using real simple primitives to sort of be able to mold the proportions right and get that up and running before we start sculpting, because it makes life so much easier. So yeah, start super simple. We're starting ultra simple in this case. So I only have, what, 3 objects that we're going to create to sort of block out the structure of the face. So with that sphere, we're going to go into edit mode and sort of, with our orthographic views, sort of push and pull the verts to sort of fit the proportions of our face. And it can be very rough, it can be very ready, as long as you're sort of getting that overall look. And also make sure you have mirroring turned on in that in edit mode. And just push and pull those proportions to sort of fit the profile of your face and the jaw structure, basically. And you can see I'm working again with very, very simple geometry. There's not a lot of subdivisions there. It's basically the default setting on that round cube. So yeah, just push and pull whatever you can.
Crazy how
get it to a
fast
point
he
where
can
you're happy with,
manipulate
and
these
then we can move
objects
on.
into like what he wants. Like that's where I feel like I'm gonna like my drawback.
let's
Not
move
my
on to the ears. We're
drawback,
going
but
to
like
make
one of the
another
limitations I'm
primitive
gonna
in this
have is the speed at which he's manipulating and working through this shit. Like there's no way I'm gonna be that fast.
Okay, so I'm just going to use a cylinder, a flat cylinder, nothing fancy, no extra parameters to change. Just line it up with the ear on one side, and then I'm just going to sort of shape it with the existing geometry. I might have to go into sort of X-ray mode or, you know, see-through mode to sort of select all the verts I want, but yeah, it's just a matter of just pushing and pulling those verts to the
True. Yeah, this guy
proportions of...
clearly has his shit down, right? Like the fact that he's doing like a 10-part tutorial series, like clearly he knows his shit.
Your ear shape. And make sure you're jumping in and out of orthographic mode. I find that if you have a keyboard that has a numpad, life is a lot faster. Things are just easier to deal with. But if you don't, you can use the tilde icon on your keyboard to switch between the front, side, and or perspective views. And of course, I've just mirrored that ear with the mirror modifier. And then we can just add one extra thing, well, a couple more things like the tip of the nose and the lips. So I'm just going to get the proportions of that little nose up and running. So she has a bit of a button nose, so a little sphere would be perfect for that. And I'm just pushing and pulling with soft select turned on in edit mode.
This motherfucker.
And now I'm just going to add the structure of the lips, just as a basic sort of thing.
Yeah, give her some dick-sucking lips, bro.
And then just push and pull those verts to sort of fit those proportions. So in this case, I'm using the round cube again. But,
Jesus.
you know, you can use whatever you like, and it depends on what you're...
I'm a menace
you're
to
building
society.
and stuff like that. So just use whatever shapes you think are easy
I swear, I'm only learning how to do this for my stream. I'm gonna make a character for my stream. I'm not gonna make myself cartoon porn. I promise.
Okay, the last thing we need to do before we move on to the sculpting phase is to sort of separate the neck from our base mesh.
They're on to
We
me.
made for our body in the previous video. So, simple process. I'm just going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select the faces of the neck.
I'm scared, Charlie. I'm scared.
So select those faces, and then I'm going to duplicate those faces.
JC
by
Face, you're
Shift-D,
misogynistic and
then separate by
womanizer
selection by
and
pushing P. And then I'm going to hide the original body mesh.
I mean,
in our new
no, I'm
collection.
not. No, absolutely
don't need
not.
that for now.
I
We're not
would
gonna
never
be
categorize
sculpting the body
myself as
anymore.
that.
We're just going to be focusing on the face. So the plan is
Women
to
are
remesh
queen.
these objects. So to
That's
do that,
true, though.
we need to do a few things to this neck, and one of them is to basically just Select the edge loops that make the whole of the neck and grid fill them.
I
So
just
we're gonna
hope you
fill
know
in
I'm
the
trying to
gaps,
be
basically.
funny.
So just a quick grid fill on
Failing,
both the
but
top and the
trying.
bottom. Because that becomes important when we start
Actually,
to
yeah, some
remesh
people would
this,
take that and like
this face.
probably be like, "You're a fucking blah blah blah."
I'm going to apply that
I'm not
mirror
gonna be
modifier
here.
on whatever I have mirrored, and then I'm going to push Control J to join everything into a single mesh.
It's like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
And a few modifications before I remesh this thing.
I don't
I'm
have a
going to
filter
quickly
between my
just make
brain
sure
and
that
my mouth.
everything's
Like,
overlapping
that
nicely,
doesn't mean you didn't mean it.
so the remesh is nice and clean.
True.
So
If
again,
anything, that means
just,
you really
join
did
everything
mean
with
it.
Control J.
No,
if you haven't done that already, and join it.
My
into
brain
a
thinks of
single
things to
object.
say. I scan it. I'm like, this
Alright,
is
so
has
this thing was
comedic
actually ready
value. I
for a
say it, and I'm
remesh,
like,
and,
those
we're
don't
going to
align
use
with
the
my
new
true
remesh
values. But I
modifier
already said
in
it trying
Blender
to be funny,
2.83. So yeah,
and now
if
I'm
you
in like the
haven't got
backpedal
2.83,
mode.
I highly recommend you download it and give this a go because the remesh modifier is fucking
It's
awesome.
fine.
Alright, so we're just going to change some parameters to get the right resolution that we need for a sculpt. So we're just going to get down to a resolution where we have enough geometry
So
where
what are
we
you
can
gonna
start
play
working
next
on
then,
the
Hammy?
overall
What are you
structure
playing? What are you playing?
of the face. And this is why I like the remesh modifier over using the straight up destructive remesher for at least this initial part of the sculpt. It's just a nice way of being able to determine the right kind of resolution you need for a sculpt. And here we have it here. I think I've got just enough resolution to start playing with smoothing things out. Maybe just a little bit more resolution. And then we can jump into sculpting this face. So yeah, I
Okay,
think
do
that's
some
enough for me
shopping.
at least. And some people might say this is too much resolution,
Oh,
but
just
I like to
chill.
work with a little more than, than the minimum because I just like to smooth things out quickly. But if you're just starting out and you find that this is too much resolution, maybe try something a little bit less. So I'm going to duplicate this face and have a backup
Okay,
of my
so we
base
could
mesh,
go
and I'm going to delete
drop
that modifier on one of those
this
faces.
girl.
And I'm just going to hide it for now.
Okay,
And with
this up
the
here.
model that we're going to sculpt on, we want to apply that modifier once you're happy with the resolution. And you can see that with the modifier, it's kind of joined everything together and sort of, gotten rid of anything that's overlapping. So if you have a look at our original mesh
Here,
and you look into wireframe mode, you can see that there's overlapping meshes.
expand it, drop
So
it
what the remesher
down.
does, it sort of just like conglomerates it all into one blob. And that's perfect for sculpting. And now it's just a
Boom,
matter
look
of
at us
starting the
go.
sculpt. So
Just like we
first things
planned
first,
it.
I'm just going to smooth out all the hard edges that we have on this current remeshed
Actually, we can even
model.
get crazier with
I'm going
it.
to turn on a map cap to see how it looks in different lighting as well.
In the club.
And then with a very soft, smooth brush,
I
I'm just going to
wanna
start
make
smoothing
love in
out
the club.
the hard edges a little bit. So the great thing about this method, about sort of building out the structure of the face with primitives, is that it saves you so much more
Now we're
time
cooking.
on this part of the process. So instead of me having to like sort of push and pull a subdivided sphere or
Uh-oh,
like a
Millhouse
high
is on to
resolution
you,
sphere
bro.
to match the face, having that low geometry to start off with
Excuse
allowed me
me?
to just sort of just jump right into this smoothing without really having to worry about the structure. So I just really have to just use the smooth tool. No other tools are required for now. And I just get to like block out that overall structure really quickly. And it just
Whoops.
saves you a lot of time. It saves you a lot of grief. So starting off with those primitives really helps in my opinion.
You did start following me.
And I want to reiterate,
Follow
this
back,
is just
follow
one
back.
method out of a countless array of different ones. My best analogy is if you put 3 character designers in a room and ask them how they make their characters,
Oh shit.
they'll each give you 5
Oh.
different kinds of explanations. There's no real right or wrong way of doing this. It's really about what is comfortable for you. And in the same vein, there is no magic bullet either. I mean, besides maybe scanning someone's
same
face
vein,
and
the
having
main
the technology
vein?
to do that.
I got a magic
There's
bullet
no
in my
real
main
magic
vein
bullet
for
to
you.
do stylized faces. It's really just about practice, trial and error, and persistence, really. Anyway, going to the sculpt
Dude,
again, I'm
his
sort of blocking
sculpting
out
is so
the sort of
good.
eye sockets of the
That's
face.
another thing that like I don't
And
think
I
I'm
like
gonna
to
be
do
able
this
to do.
very roughly as well, sort of just
But
get
I
the
don't need to do
overall
it. None of
structure
this I need
the
to
eye
do. My
sockets.
character's not
And
even gonna
also
have a
informs the
face.
cheekbone as well.
Or
So,
nose, or
playing with the
ears. Like it's
shapes
just like
that
a
I'm
fucking
working
helmet
with,
with a slot for a
or the existing
visor.
shape that I have, and just sort of pushing and pulling the ferts using the brush tools, smoothing out, pushing and pulling again, smooth out, and etc. I mean, again, you can see just by pushing those existing geometry, we're getting that sort of structure coming through already.
In the club.
And you can see I'm adding some cheekbone now, just very, very gently adding that geometry. I don't want to push it too hard. I don't want to add it
Nice,
too
we're
quickly.
chilling now.
I'm just pushing it and smoothing it, pushing it and smoothing it. And it's just a real iterative process. Again, you need to have patience when you're doing this kind of stuff, especially if you're just starting out. Don't
Just
expect
starting
to
out,
have a
that's
perfect
me. He's
result
talking
on
to
your
me,
first attempt.
directly to
Don't
me.
expect to have a perfect result in an hour or two. Sometimes it can take, a couple hours to make something. Sometimes it could take a day. Sometimes it could take a week. The time you have, your skill set, and dare I say, managing your own expectations from the get-go. Popping into the commentary of the eye sockets at the moment.
Holy smokes, we got you
sculpted those in,
covered.
and now I'm going to remesh a second.
By the way, if you wanted to know how that reads, yo, you want a more personal glimpse into my world outside of the stream? Holy smokes, we got you covered. Follow me on Instagram to see me doing IRL shit and to check out the gosh darn cats that allow us to live with them. Hear that link? Dropped it. Fucking dope. Something interesting, random, or do a little dance. Let's go with random. There is a shed in my backyard, and inside that shed is a portable table saw, which I used over the weekend to cut some 2x4s and make a door to the crawl space of my house. And that door is fucking garbage. I wish I could remake it. I mean, I could remake it, but it's fine. We don't need to worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
Second time to add some extra resolution. So just using the default remesh in this case, not the modifier, to just add some extra resolution to that eye socket, which allows me to
those are some long sentences, actually. The best way to support me right now is by hitting that follow button and making sure to catch me whenever I'm live to help me attain the 3+ average viewers for the affiliate threshold. That is a long ass sentence. I can't express enough how much that would mean for me and the community.
Tell in as I add the eyeballs as
Sounds
well.
Ridiculous.
And again, there's a little bit of trial and error involved.
Streamlabs
so
is
just
like
choosing
my
that
own
right
personal,
resolution
like,
where necessary.
I'm gonna make you say some shit in chat,
And smoothing that
Streamlabs.
out. And that gives me enough geometry to sort of set the eyeballs into place.
That is a scary as
So I'm
fuck
just gonna
model
build
right
some
now.
primitives again,
Like
make
if
a sphere,
something were to
fit it
show up
into
at my
the eye
house that
socket,
looked
and
like
then
that
mirror
does right now, I would be fucking
Okay, now
scared.
back to my wise words of wisdom about sculpting in 3D. Because just like any other artistic skill, be it drawing, real life sculpting, painting, etc., you can't just expect to jump into a 3D software and expect to create, Michelangelo's David or something like that. You got to practice, basically. And there's this real stupid expectation by, a lot of young artists and a lot of new artists doing this sort of stuff, that they think that the 3D software is going to just do everything for them and make life easier. That is the furthest thing from the truth ever. If you've ever tried to...
The furthest thing from the truth. I think he meant the furthest thing from the truth. Furtherest. That's nutty. So...
Open up ZBrush and give it a go. It is a fucking piece of shit software. The UI is shit. The shortcuts are shit. The brushes are a pain in the ass to get to. The customization is a pain in the ass. Everything is a real piece of shit when it comes to using that software. But it is so powerful and so versatile that, there's really no other option when it comes to doing ultra high level production art, essentially. And, it's nice that we have Blender to do this sort of stuff, on this level. But just don't expect to be able to create a masterpiece out the bat with any of these softwares. It really takes a firm understanding of the fundamentals, and you really need to dig deep, take the time and study in some ways in order to create something that you are ultimately going to be happy with. Okay, back to the eyelids here. What I've done is actually I've duplicated the eyeball and then scaled it up and then separated the top and the bottom of the eyeball in order to block out the eyelids. So now I'm just rotating those sort of pseudo eyelids to sort of fit my mesh. So trying to get them into the right proportions, rotating them where necessary, using the 3D cursor as a pivot point to get those eyelids up and ready for sculpting. And it's a lot easier to sort of do this method in order to get eyelids working rather than trying to just sort of push and pull vertices or, use the din topo to sort of flesh out the eyelids.
Again, I'm not making eyes, so I don't need
add
to necessarily do this, but
modifier to these
it'd be
eyelids
good to
once
have
they're
the
ready.
knowledge
And
and
that will give it some
know-how
fleshiness
for if I wanted
that
to
we
make
can,
characters in the
apply
future, or
before
like
we,
create
join this
models
with the
that
rest of
like
our
interact with the character I'm gonna make, because like clearly that's something I'm gonna want to do, and of course the waifus eventually.
Head mesh. So again, just tweaking those eyelids, trying to get them into a place that I like the most. And it's good to understand how sort of eyelids sit on the face. If you look at diagrams of people or pictures of people in profile, the top eyelid tends to sit a bit more forward than the bottom eyelid on the face. So getting that right can make a big difference. So as you can see here, I'm adding a solidify modifier now, and I'm just sort of modifying those parameters a little bit to get the right thickness for the eyelid. And then once I'm happy, I'm just applying all those modifiers on the eyelid and then joining the eyelids to our face mesh. And now I'm just going to quickly remesh that, make sure that the parameters are the right scale, remesh it, and now those eyelids are now joined to the skull. And now we're ready to smooth those out with the smooth tool. So using our sculpt tools, we're just going to sort of smooth out the top and bottom of those eyelids.
Damn.
And now it's just a matter of tweaking those that mesh again and getting it into the shape that we need. And you can see as I sculpt this eyelid, I'm kind of pushing and pulling you know, the mesh. Even if it overlaps, I don't really care, because I can just remesh it again, and that overlapping mesh will just become, you know, a solid object again. So I don't really care about overlapping the mesh itself, because just remeshing it will fix that problem. And you can see just with those little eyelids, using the modifiers and then joining it, I was able to add a lot of form and structure to the face very quickly just by playing with primitives again. And here's a perfect example as to why I sped up the video for the majority of this walkthrough. There's a lot of tweaking involved, a lot of, like, you know, pushing and pulling little things to get it the way you want it. A lot of, like, minutia when you're sculpting as well. Whether it's, you know, early in the stage of sculpting or later in the stage, there's always this degree of just, you know, millimeters versus, you know, meters. And some artists would say that I'm actually going into too much detail early on at this stage. I'm worrying about the minutia too much at this stage, but you know, again, it's down to what is comfortable for you when you're sculpting. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong way to do this, especially in Blender at the moment, where, you know, the tool set is changing so quickly, especially in the sculpting tool set, that me telling you a specific method for doing the face is actually probably to your detriment, because, you know, I'm not going to tell you a specific way to do this, because in another version of Blender in maybe 3 months or 9 months, there'll be a completely different workflow involved. So it's really down to, you know, learning the tools, learning the method, and understanding the fundamentals over the tool set. And that goes for Blender, it goes for ZBrush, it goes for Maya. It's really about understanding the structure of the face, working that through, and just, you know, practicing in the medium. And that's what this is actually. 3D sculpting is an artistic medium. There's a reason why there are people who are professionals in just sculpting characters and sculpting characters only, because they've spent so much time working on this as a profession that they kind of know nothing else, basically. They just know how to sculpt.
I mean, this is a complex enough medium, like he called it, to warrant that, right? You could specialize in just this and be able to probably make a living off of it. Like, I imagine if I got really good at sculpting, like, and that might be what some people do. Like, imagine, like, you're trying to get, like, a stream up and going, right? And you learn some sort of art practice. And then on the side, you're running, like, this art studio. And then you stream in your free time. So you can get to where, like, just a few gigs, especially if you're doing modeling like this, and like 3D modeling, character animations, and like building that kind of shit. I can't imagine it's cheap, right? So you could get to where you're doing like a handful of projects a month, and that is what your income is based off of. And anything you make extra on the streaming side is just like padding for that. But like, anyway, yeah. Not saying that's what I want to get into, but like, I can see that being a thing.
Animate. They don't know how to render. They don't know how to rig. They just know how to sculpt. And that's because they spent all their effort into just getting that skill set up to scratch. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you don't expect a painter to be able to sculpt out a beautiful, figure in a matter of months, and neither should you.
The fuck is he talking about now? That
I
didn't
mean,
make
they're
any
painters.
sense.
They do what they do and they do it well. And the same thing goes for anything in 3D, including sculpting characters. But if you want to learn a bit about everything and you want to, make your own films or make your own, animations, it is worth understanding the process from start to finish, in my opinion. I know that I wouldn't be where I am now, today, without understanding a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And jumping into the sculpt here, the process, you can see I'm starting to block out the nose structure. And, I didn't really deviate that far from the initial shapes that I blocked out at the start of the video. I'm just basically, refining that form and getting that profile in that, sort of matches the imagery that I've got in my reference.
Very cool.
And, looking at the overall structure so far, apart from the eyes, really not much has changed. It's really just me pushing and pulling.
That's terrifying.
The geometry as I have remeshed it, and you'll see me remeshing here and there every now and then to add new geometry.
Here comes the lips. Damn, it's so fucking cool how clean
the eyelids and the nose.
Clean he gets this looking.
There's a reason why I'm sort of ranting about other stuff at the same time and giving a few words of wisdom is because the process itself, not much is happening. It's just me, playing with, the shape and the form and getting things in a way that I like. And you can see, sometimes things don't work out. The lips look absolutely dog shit at the moment. And then I just sort of erase it and, rebuild it and erase it and rebuild it and get it to a point where, suddenly, fuck, it kind of looks okay. It sometimes it's just accidental where you kind of do something like this. Oh, wait, there we go. The lips don't look that bad now. Okay, I can work with this. And then you kind of move on. It's that sort of process. And, me giving you sort of hints on, how I do the lips, specifically, it doesn't really apply to you, especially if you're doing this for the first time or doing this, for the thousandth time. It's my method, or, I might be making shit up on the way. So, again, it's a very naturalistic sort of iterative process that, you need to just understand and embrace, essentially. But there are a few hints I can give you about, building out the face structure. One is just to be aware of where the fat lies in the face, the cheek structure. Don't forget about the cheek structure, the little bit of flesh that sort of, bunch up near the lips, the parts below the lips and the chin that sort of ebb and flow, around that structure. And again, it doesn't, it's not something you can just like make up on the spot. You need to get reference. You need to look at, maybe some real life examples. You can see I'm just building out that flesh at the bottom of the lips there. I'm adding that flow of the cheekbones and the, the fat around the cheeks. I'm sort of adding that in and just smoothing that out, adding that in, smoothing that out, and just understanding the flow of the face. Though. As a, a basic sort of structural thing, finding the right reference is really important. And again, it's about balancing that sort of realistic, structure of the face with that stylization that you may be going for. So, in some ways, I could easily argue that drawing or sculpting a stylized face is actually more difficult than doing a realistic face, because with a realistic face, you've got the photo reference right there in front of you. You've got the character or the actor that you're copying, and you can basically trace it.
Yes, you could make
perfectly. You could trace the form. You could trace their eyes. You trace the shape of everything around their face to get it perfect for that particular, that figure. Whereas with, a stylized character, you basically are a designer as well as the modeler. So you're designing a face or a figure, that is meant to be appealing in a more stylized and simplistic way. So there's a lot of consideration that goes on even in a stylized character such as this.
What was he painting?
You can see I'm sort of experimenting here with face sets, which is a new thing in Blender 2.8. I didn't quite understand how it worked, and then I got a hold of it. So again, it's about practicing with new tools and, building out your skill set, as the software evolves. So again, I can give you advice about how to sculpt, but giving you advice about the tool set as they are constantly evolving, it seems almost, wrong to do so. So, you know, in
Ooh.
this case, I would actually say look up, if you want to try and use face sets for your own model, look up the Blender documentation on how to use them, because that's the only way that I found the right information. Or go into the Blender website and see how it works, because again, this tool can change overnight, and you know, it might not be useful anymore in the context that I'm working with it. So again, learn about the fundamentals, then learn about the tool sets. As you can see here, I'm working through the ear at the moment, and you know, I'm just
So
fleshing out a
again, fortunately for me, I don't have to worry about the fucking ear, or the nose, or
very
the mouth.
stylized sort of structure. And if you're going with like an ultra realistic or a realistic sort of ear in general, it would be a very good idea for you to find the correct reference about how the ear flows and how the shape flows and all that sort of stuff, because they're very complicated. And yeah, you know, to get them right and get them looking right,
Damn. Oh, I just had a fucking crazy thought. What if I like, what if I modeled everybody I work with and model the office? Like I could fucking, oh my God. Oh my God, that's actually like fucking hysterical. I could like make up all kinds of crazy scenarios and like animate them and play them out. Oh my gosh, that would be so funny. Oh shit.
is, you know, a bit of a challenge. So definitely find
Damn.
some really
Or fuck, even crazier. I could model anybody. I could model famous people. I could model other streamers and have them put them into crazy
good
situations.
reference on, you know, ear structure if you're working on that sort of stuff.
Damn, okay.
And again, as you can see, I'm refining the lips, you know, getting that sharpness into the top lip, you know, working
The
with the style
sculpting
that I
tools are
want in
gonna
mind.
be. I don't have to do much sculpting though. My shit's all gonna be.
And we're getting pretty
just
close to done
regular
here.
modeling.
I mean,
I
I'm
feel
pretty
like.
happy with, you know, this result. And I think it's good enough to start doing some retopologizing with overall. And again, this is one of those subjective things, right? If you get to a point where you're happy to start retopologizing, then that's good enough for you. Don't judge it based on someone else's opinion unless you're working for a production. If you are, you know, constrained by time or you want to just move on, there's nothing wrong with going with something that's a little bit rougher than this. You can go with any sort of level of detail when it comes to retopo. But for me, I feel this is fine. I'm just going to work with this.
Yeah,
and
he's
just
doing
clean
this
it
for
up.
a particular reason, right? So I definitely have to take that into consideration. Like he's literally making like a video or animating a video or movie with these characters. So like obviously he's looking for like what he's looking for. My shit doesn't have to be that good, especially for my first time. Like what? It's gonna be shit, but it's gonna work.
Up a little bit, and I think we're good to go.
Really, I just need something that I can take into whatever application it is to get it onto the stream. Because like right now, I could have like a 3D model of Cyber Fatty up there
now
doing
that
like
the
some
face is
dances and
largely
shit, or
sculpted,
just
I'm
hanging
gonna
out,
sort of
leaning
flesh
against the
out
wall,
eyebrows with a separate object.
sitting there.
No
Then like
sculpting
somebody
involved
like
here. I'm
activates a
basically
command
just
in
gonna
chat, and he
extrude
like
out a
gets
bunch
up
of
and does
faces
something.
with a single
Or
loop
like if a follower
to get the
happens,
structure
or
that I
you
want.
know, like I don't know.
Just literally just
I'm excited to
tracing
see what happens.
the sketch. So again, having good reference really helps you. And again, I'm not going to give you all that much instruction in this case, because if you've gotten to this video 5, and you're still wondering how to extrude a eyebrow, then I'm wondering how the hell you managed to get the body done. So yeah, not that complicated.
That's funny. He's fucking calling
And by the
people
way, if
out.
you're wondering how I managed to get the dip in those eyeballs to look like that, I basically just added a multi-res modifier to the eyeballs and then sculpted in, you know, a dip in the eyeballs. So that's basically all I did. It's not that complicated. So yeah, if you want to do it with this method, go ahead. But it's not necessary. It's just something that I like to do sometimes. But if you want to give it a go, go for it.
Ooh.
Okay, for the eyelashes, it's a little bit more difficult. So what I've done here, I've basically just created a single vert, and making sure I have vert selection turned on, I just extruded out that selection and then form the shape of the eyelash. Yeah, a little bit of work, but it's, you know, it makes a huge difference when you add eyelashes to these characters. And then to add a little bit of volume, I've given it a subdivision modifier, and then I've also added a solidify modifier to give it just a little bit of thickness. Alright, I think we're good to go for adding some rendering previews to this thing. So I got a little trick to make things look really pretty very quickly. Obviously using Eevee. So if you're not familiar with Eevee, I'd say try and find a nice tutorial series on setting that up. Actually, I think I have one. I have one about Eevee called 3D for Noobs. It was a live stream video. So I talk about materials and lighting and stuff like that. So check that out if you're not familiar with it. But basically, with a few things switched on in Eevee, you can make a little preview render that looks really nice. Alright, so I've just added a couple lights. Make sure you got contact shadows turned on those lights as well. And then, I've had to delete some keyframes because I use them for another tutorial. So just position your camera into place, get it into a position that you like the most. In my case, I'm just changing the focal length as well. And as you can see, I've set the world space color to be blue, just in the world settings. And then I'm just gonna add some materials to the eyebrows and the eyelashes, just a black material. And then in the face, I have a really simple method for making things look a bit nicer. So I'm just gonna give it, you know, a skin color, any old skin color, just to see how it looks. Obviously not this color. So I'm just playing around with it a little bit. So just try and find the color that works for you. I was just experimenting with the basic color set just to, you know, see how it looks. Just going to add some pupils to the eyeballs just for a bit of character. And just give it a black material.
It's fucking crazy. It's fucking nuts how good that turned out. Alright, so I'm just positioning the lighting to be in a more appealing way. So I like to have a little bit of shadow on one side, a little bit of, you know, rim light, you know, just be clever with the way you light things and give it a good rim job, he said.
You know, and as we get more into the whole texturing side of this character series, I'll probably start talking about lighting a bit more. But, you know, just try and find a light setup that looks a bit more appealing than just a straight on flat light. Alright, let's get that skin color in there. Huh? So with the face selector, jump into the material node editor and then add an ambient occlusion node. Then add a color ramp node and then give it 2 colors with a darker color, you know, to get those the little shadowing in there. So I'm going to give a bit of a purple undertone and then give it a nice skin color for the you know, majority of the face. And very quickly you can get a very appealing looking concept model out the door without really texturing it. It's my little cheat to you know, flesh out a character and just see how it looks with the proper skin tones and stuff like that without, you know, too many lighting tricks and without having to worry about texturing. That's all I do for these sort of renders when I'm doing like preview renders. And it works really effectively. It's really good for stylized characters like this as well. And as you can see, I forgot to turn off the original mesh that I had for at the start of the video. Turn off the render preview on that. And you can see I'm pretty happy with this result. About a little bit of subsurf scattering as well, just a tiny bit to give it a bit of character. And I've turned off freestyle there because I forgot to turn it off in the last video. But yeah, that's basically it for this model. I'm really happy with the result. And in the next video, we're going to talk about how to retopo and get this ready for an animation ready mesh. So we're going to grab the head, retopo it, and attach it to our body. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But first, before we wrap up, I just want to compare this face to the original base mesh that we created. And I would just really want to communicate the idea that by blocking out these forms as early as possible, how effective it is to flesh out the rest with a not a very complicated tool set using the sculpt tools and remeshing. You can see here the faces in terms of their proportion and form and shape are practically identical.
Yeah.
So by just forming those basic shapes and basic forms, it will make your life way easier when it comes to sculpting. And that's why this video, I haven't really spoken much about the sculpting process all that much, because all the tools you use while sculpting are basically doing the same thing. They're just pushing and pulling the mesh around, essentially. So, once you understand how you want to structure your face, using the tools to suit what you're aiming to do is not that difficult, all things considered. So,
Gotcha.
Just consider the form, consider the shape,
Considering it,
and consider how to save time and how to save, the effort that goes into sculpting something from scratch by just planning the basic shapes and form, really early on. And the rest comes kind of naturally, once you do that. So, yeah, give it a go. Try and have fun, and try not to get too frustrated with the process, because once you get used to it, it can be really fun and pretty therapeutic as well. So until then, catches and have fun.
5, 6 is 52
G'day everyone,
minutes by
Dikko here
itself.
with another kick-ass walkthrough. This is part 6 of a multi-part series covering modeling for animation. And this is a long one, everyone, so strap in, grab a drink, get comfy, and
I do need a
pay
drink,
attention,
but I don't have
because
anything to drink.
I think this might well be the most comprehensive video on facial topology on YouTube, as of the time this thing was published. I could have split this up into multiple parts, but I figured that would be a detriment to you and to me, and I didn't want to do any more editing, so
Whoa, yeah,
that.
look at all the
And
fucking...
as you can see, this is what we start off with. It looks like trash, it's just a mess, and then it turns into this. Ready for animation, good for rigging, great for doing facial expression, and all that fancy pants stuff that you would want from an animation character. And with a little bit of planning and experimental thinking, it joins up seamlessly with the rest of the body that we completed in the previous videos. And before we jump into the modeling side of things, I want to do things properly and explain why we're going to do the things in the way that we're going to do it. So to start off with, I want to talk about how we structure the changes in direction around the face with our edge loops. The face itself has many twists and turns in terms of its muscle structure and the way it flows around the face. And these changes are represented by these 5-star poles around the structure of the face. And generally speaking, they are in these locations: the tip of the nose bridge, the corner of the eye on the outside, the middle of the cheek, the point in which the nose meets the cheek, and the upper cheekbone. And all these 5 points represent changes in direction of the musculature of the face around the eye as it transitions into the cheek, the jaw, the nasolabial crease, and the mouth. And what you end up with when you start working out your edge loops is this general pattern of a sort of pentagonal shape around the eye. And within that pentagon, you end up with continuous edge loops to fill out the upper cheek, lower eyebrow, and the eyelids. Now for the mouth, we have a similar situation. We end up having a sort of star down there near the change.
So yeah, all of this for me is just like
The direction
useless for the model I'm making.
of the musculature near the jaw and the mouth. And I've painted one of the stars blue because it's kind of a circumstantial sort of change of direction. So it depends on how you structure the cheek and the edge flow of the mouth. The same can be said for this edge loop that I'm about to create here with this green line. This one can be optional, but I like to have it because it helps to frame the eyes nicely. And I find when I animate squints and smiles that this loop really helps to keep the structure in line. And for the most part, this ends up being the sort of intersection in the change of direction between the cheeks, the forehead, and the mouth. For the mouth itself, I like to have one edge loop that goes over the nose and then around the chin to form that nasolabial crease. which then in turn gives us a nice way to nest in the edge loops for the lips. Now let's talk about the overall structure of the eyes and lips. So what I like to have when I model my eyes and lips, I like to have a degree of symmetry throughout the structure of the upper and lower lips and eyelids. So I like to consider the area of the eyelids to have 4 general quadrants. So the upper left, the upper right, the lower left, and the lower right. So I'd like to make sure that there's a degree of organization there. And that applies to the lips just as much as it applies to the eyes. And we'll get into that in more detail soon. Along the cheek, this is pretty much the only place where you'll get sort of a meshed-like structure. So a quadded up structure that is pretty uniform across the board. There's no loops there, so to speak. And then we have a overall loop that travels around the face to sort of frame the jawline and the forehead. Now let's talk about one of the most important parts of the face mesh, and that is the amount of spans between the upper and lower eyelids and lips. Now some people will say you need a very specific amount to at least get the right amount of deformation, but I think that's kind of bullshit and it's circumstantial to whatever you're building. But there is one thing I like to keep consistent, and that is an even amount of spans on the top and the bottom of the eyes and lips. So if there's 10 spans on the top of the eyelid, I want 10 spans on the bottom of the eyelid to match. And that makes rigging way, way easier. And you can see I've kept that symmetry across each 4 quadrants of the eye. So in this case, I have 3 spans in each quadrant. And there's probably some modelers out there that are thinking, oh man, that's just too pedantic. But my response then is, fuck you, you try and rig it then. By having that nice symmetry between the upper and lower eyelids and mouth, rigging is way, way, way easier. And I say this with absolute conviction because I've had to rig my own shit for years, both professionally and on personal projects. So you can see here, what you should end up with is this nice circular infinite loops around the eye. So if you have any spiraling going on, that means you fucked up and you need to rebuild it. And of course, just like the body, we'll have a span that goes right down the center line of the face, and that is a non-interrupted loop. And that means no stars in the center line of the face because, again, it's a total nightmare to work with. And you can have a single loop that goes around the nose, and that will help you build out the structure if you want to. And it also provides the necessary volume you need to extrude out the tip of the nose and the nostrils. And with the way that I build out the structure of the cheek, I usually have a span that ends up traveling from the eye under the nose. And for some reason, it just works better for me. It deforms better. I think it's a cleaner mesh, and the distribution of the quads around the cheek and the intersection of the lips tends to be a bit cleaner, in my opinion. Though I will say this is not the be-all and end-all in terms of edge flow design on the face. In some cases, they can just travel down to the opening of the lip, but that's up to you. And speaking of the lip, we have a edge loop that sort of follows the nasolabial crease of the face. So that's the crease between the nose and the lips and the cheek. And inside that, we're going to basically have some infinite loops that sit within that.
This is a lot of information, but just because we're not going to use it on this model doesn't mean it's not good information to have. So you can see how much thought goes into this. That's nuts. It's not just like throw something together, you know. But he made that very clear in the beginning, right? As much pre-planning and thought and like purposefulness that you put into it, you're gonna get a better result coming out. Which is like what's
nasolabial.
I like things like that. Where like you're rewarded for spending time on it.
So just like the eyes, we end up with that sort of infinite loop structure that isn't spiraling. So if it's spiraling, again, you fucked up and you need to rebuild it. And you may notice on the top corner of the upper lip, I've added back in that 5-star pole that gives me that change in direction that allows me to build out the muscle structure of the lips. And then we have, again, an identical amount of spans on the top and bottom lip, with a lot of those spans traveling up the nose to the skull. And we can reduce those polygons at the base of the skull as we build out that topology. So here, just to demonstrate, even amount of quads across the top and the bottom lips. And then some more spans in terms of edge loops going around the structure of the lips to fill those out. And that's about it when it comes to the overall structure of our edge flow on the face. And you can make some concessions when it comes to this sort of design. You can look at other people's approaches to this, but generally speaking, the underlying pattern is usually the same. And again, I'm just adding some loops here just to show how the ear is connected. It's basically just this, extrusion of faces, basically. But again, there's plenty of ways to sort of adapt this to different designs. And, if you have to add nostrils, for instance, you just have to think cleverly about where you place that extrusions for the nostrils. But yeah, this is the general structure we're aiming for our edge flow going forward. And it's really important that you grasp the reasoning behind it all. Otherwise, you're going to get really lost very quickly. Okay, let's jump into the actual modeling process. So we're going to create a single plane. And then in edit mode, we're going to split it in half and delete the other half. And then we're going to basically mirror that with a mirror modifier. So we have a mirrored version of that plane. So we only have to model one half of the body. All right. So just line that up. And then we're going to turn on snapping to faces in the menu there. And then we're going to quickly grab each vert and sort of align it with the circumference of the eye. And again, let me reiterate, this is not the only way to do this sort of shit. If you have a better way or a way that you find more comfortable to do, then go ahead and follow it. But as long as you get that structure right, it doesn't matter how you build it. All right, I turned on in front in the viewport settings for that object so I can see exactly what's going on without any obstruction. So I'm just splitting up that quad again into one half, and I'm just blocking out the sort of area in which the eyes are going to sit in. So I'm getting that sort of pentagonal structure up and running as early as I can. So these 5 corners are basically going to represent that change in direction that occurs around the structure of the eye. And here I am, just being a little bit pedantic about the placement, but it can be rough. It's rough and ready. We're just blocking out things at this stage. I added another subdivision, and now I'm going to inset to create that first loop that represents the eyelids. And then I deleted those insetted faces. And now I'm just going to make sure I have a symmetrical amount of spans across that structure, as always. So making sure that's nice and clean. So the top and bottom should have the same amount of faces on the top and the bottom. And now just shaping those verts individually to make sure it's nice and clean. And as always, we're not working with a lot of geometry at the start. We're keeping it nice and simple so we don't get lost inside of all that complexity. Okay, once you're happy with that shape of your eye, we're going to extrude out our first span that goes from the eye and under the nose. Turn on clipping so it doesn't overlap. And this will make sense as you see it unfold, but basically it will help us structure out the nose and the nasolabial crease to get that working the way we want. And it's at this stage that you can, if you want to, add a skin wrap modifier to your mesh, and it will help just keep the mesh sticking to your underlying sculpt. Okay, we're going to add a single subdivision to the top and bottom lip on the inside of the eye, and I'm going to extrude inwards to the center of the face to bridge the gap between the eye, by which it's also no coincidence that it also forms the bridge of the nose. Alright, I'm also going to extrude one span down the center line to help us form the structure of that mask loop we talked about earlier. And watch the pattern of extrusions I just did now. We're creating that first star pole that I talked about during our little analysis, i.e. it's our
Listen to me. Listen to me. Those of you who doubt me, just know that I will one day be the most powerful being to have ever lived. Ever!
Direction from the eye loop into the sort of cheek loop that we talked about earlier.
It is only for factual.
To sort of just reposition
I do not bullshit you.
Things to make life a little easier. Okay, let's block out our next change in direction, which we're going to extrude a single face up and to the side and fill out that bridge of the nose. So as you can see, we have our second change in direction on the upper eye, which interfaces with the bridge of the nose and the forehead. And now let's just do some extrusions on the side of the face to get that mask shape up and running. So we're just going to...
I missed whatever he
that
did.
loop. I'm going to merge some verts to keep that flow up and running. Really lost very quickly. Okay, let's jump into the actual modeling process. So we're going to create a single plane, and then edit mode, we're going to split it in half and delete the other half. And then we're going to basically mirror that with a mirror modifier. So we have a mirrored version of that plane. So we only have to model one half of the body. All right. So just line that up. And then we're going to turn on snapping to faces in the menu there. And then we're going to quickly grab each vert and sort of align it with the circumference of the eye. And again, let me reiterate, this is not the only way to do this sort of shit. If you have a sculpt, okay, we're going to add a single subdivision to the by filling up that bottom face. And now if we check our first successful loop, we got that mask shape up and running. We've got our inner loops of the eyelids up and running. So now we can start to worry about
anxious. I want to like start modeling.
Area. So let's get that nasolabial cheek up and running. So we're going to do some extrusions there. We're going to fill up that top of our loop there with a few extrusions and fills. And as you can see, if I select that face loop, we're building out our second loop around the mouth, which will form our nasolabial crease. So just a few extrusions around the circumference of the lips, and we've got that loop going around the mouth just as I planned at the start of the video.
He did plan that. And the loop going around the mask of the eyes.
Again, just a bit of cleanup, just repositioning a few verts to give me an idea of where I want that crease to sit. So thickening that up a little bit. Now let's construct the loop that will form the structure.
This guy's
of lips.
fucking good at this. I
I
hope I'm able to get to this point.
Fourth major loop up and running.
Because it's like,
to see the pattern arise.
If I were to try to figure this out on my own, there's no telling how fucking long it would take. But when you have like guidance like this, you know, like basically I'm going to be able to absorb some of his knowledge and get not necessarily like immediately caught up to his skill level, but I'm going to have like leaps and bounds of progress compared to what it would be if I just like, okay, open Blender, not watch any tutorials and just try to figure it out on my own. Like there's no fucking way.
Rise.
Like to get to the point of like understanding like where these loops need to go and where they need to wrap around, and like I don't know, like I guess if I thought about it hard enough and like moved my face around enough, I could like try to find where certain features like are tensioned to others and use that as like the basis for like where these loops go. But
I know I bloody am. So again, just spending some time to rearrange some verts, not adding any extra geometry, just getting that structure in where I want it to be. And making sure it's all very consistent. So you can see the symmetry arise in that lip loop there. And I've added a new loop in between that nasolabial loop to sort of add some more structure to the face. So now we have all these loops designed exactly where I want them to be. So with the existing loops now in place, let's add some structural spans across the lips and the face. So as you can see, I'm making sure I'm staying consistent across the bottom and top of the lip. I'm making sure that all those loops are staying consistent. So I'm just now structuring those verts in place, just moving them around to fit the form of my face. So again, adding a few more spans across the eyes, making sure it's consistent across the top and the bottom of the eyelids. And that can take a little bit of trial and error, just getting that right. So you can see I added 2 loops in between every major span except the edges there. And the amount of spans that you add is completely up to you. It really depends on what you're building this for. If you want less spans or more spans in mind, then go for it. As long as you have that underlying structure going on, it really doesn't matter, because we've already blocked out those essential loops for the eyes, mouth, and cheek. And this is especially important if you plan on going for a low poly look or a high poly look, or you know, you're building this for a game asset or a VFX asset. The amount of extra geometry you add can really make a difference in the presentation of your model. So be conscious of what you're building it for. And as you can see, I'm just making sure that I'm consistent across my loops. I'm making sure that the spans are equal on the bottom and top. And now I'm just rearranging some of those verts to make sure I get that underlying structure up and running. And now I'm adding some loops to form the lips and eyelids. And these basically just serve as structural or volume enhancing loops. They aren't going to be cycling around the entire body. They are basically infinite loops within those spans. And now, of course, we're starting to extrude out that cheek, and we've made that fourth pole, just where we said it would happen, in the middle of the cheek. And for the bottom of the chin, we're going to build out the structure of the jawline, and again, we're about to extrude out that next pole that changes the direction of the mouth and cheek structure into that jaw structure. And with a few extrusions here, I'm building out that gridded structure for the cheek mass. And just rearrange that a little bit to get it looking a little
Damn,
bit
watching
more
him
even.
is fucking tight though. This is dope.
And now we're about to make that loop that travels around the circumference of the face. So with a few edge extrusions, I'm going to map out that structure and then just fill in that gap. And now we're starting to get that facial loop that goes around the entire jawline and around the forehead. And if you didn't notice, during that process, we just created the fourth pole that intersects the change of direction between the upper cheekbone and that lower corner of the eye loop. And now I'm just extruding out some edges to be able to fill out that forehead structure and get that final loop that travels around the entirety of the face. And now I'm just jumping into sculpt mode to just smooth out and even out that quad structure. And with the skin wrap modifier turned on, you can see it's sticking to the mesh quite nicely. Obviously there's some niggles there that we have to fix up, but that's okay. And you can see that wireframe there. We're getting that structure exactly how we described it at the start of the video. And of course, just make sure that your center line is nicely merged and there's no overlapping or clipping issues with the center line of verts, because that's potentially going to become a real problem if you don't keep an eye on that. So you can see there's a bit of overlap. So we're just cleaning all those up, making sure they're not overlapping. And you can really see that structure take hold already at this early stage. So now's the time to sort of apply that first skin wrap modifier and then make a new one, because then we can sort of fix in the current geometry in its place and then allow it to sort of breathe, so to speak, when we sculpt upon it or move things around. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you try and experiment with it, you'll understand. So now's the time we can potentially start working on the nose. So very simple sort of structure with this stylized character. All I gotta do is sort of make an extrusion toward the center and then rearrange the verts to fill out that nose. And the nice thing about this method is that, at least with this stylized nose, there's a continuous loop that forms that structure, so I don't have to worry about cleaning up or redirecting any loops. All the volume for that nose is sitting within that loop structure, which is really nice. And this simplified approach to building out the nose is perfect for something like I don't know, like an anime character, a stylized Disney style character that doesn't have nostrils, that kind of thing.
Okay.
If you plan on adding nostrils to your character's nose, you may have to look up how to sort of work out that loop structure. It could be as simple as adding some extrusions to the nostril, or it could be something more complicated, but it really depends on your research and how you approach that in a problem-solving manner. So adding some extra edge loops down the center line of the face to fill out that nose, and I'll link that up with the lip loops. So now we have a nice clean amount of spans going across the center line of the nose down to the lips. And we're just filling out that quad structure, making sure it stays as a quad structure by adding a few spans and then filling. So that's looking pretty good. With the shrink wrap modifier enabled, we're just going to sort of sculpt out that nose a little bit, let those faces and verts relax a little bit and get a more even quad structure across the face. And of course, make sure that center line structure is nice and clean so there's no overlaps. I mean, that's the worst thing you want when you start modeling. Adding a few loops in the center of that nose to keep that structure nice and voluminous. smoothing out with a few
This is so dope.
soft brush strokes of the smooth tool in sculpt mode, and applying that shrink wrap modifier so I can more evenly distribute those faces, and then adding a new shrink wrap modifier. And you can see how much that makes a difference when you apply it every now and then reapply a new modifier, that is. So using the sculpt tools to smooth out the distribution of those faces, you're going to get a nice even distribution of the mesh across the face, and that's really what you want across the board. And of course, once you've done sculpting out and smoothing out those vertices, just chuck on another shrink wrap modifier and keep on moving. So now I'm just adding some extra volume where necessary. I might add a few loops around the jawline and the forehead, but that of course is optional for you. You don't have to do it. It's really dependent on your model and the design you're working on. So long as the loops aren't spiraling out of control, you're onto a good thing, I think. So you can see I'm modifying the existing geometry that I have to sort of prepare for the next stage of the modeling process, which is to fix up the skull and the neck. So I'm just sort of lining things up to where I think they ought to be, so where verts should lie. And now I'm going to extrude out around the circumference of the ear. And the faces in which you do this is completely up to you, because it depends on the design you're working with. So it doesn't have to be these exact faces that you're extruding from. So long as you do it in a clean and orderly fashion, it doesn't really matter. So my whole philosophy about consistency and symmetry also apply to the ear. So I'm going to keep the spans identical across that giant hole that will become the ear. So 2 spans on each side in this case. And I may want to alter this in the future, but you know, if it's enough for your model, that's okay. And that hole will become the basis of the extrusion of the ear in the future. But first, we're going to work out the structure of the skull and the neck. And right now, I'm just basically cleaning up my geometry a little bit. Just put them into place where I think they should lie. The back of that hole of the ear should sort of sit behind the ear for that future extrusion. So just getting that in line and just, you know, playing with what's already there.
True. Ooh, halfway, let's go. Okay, so sleepy.
Okay, it's now time to block out the top of the scalp. So I'm going to extrude some faces up and over to the top of the skull. And I'm going to have it meet at the center of the skull and merge using that mirror modifier. Add a few spans to fill out the volume there, and the skin wrap will do a good job of that. Apply that, make a new modifier, and we're good to go. Alright, with that overlying structure up and running on the top of the skull, it's now time to join it up with the front of the face. So we have to add a few spans and be a bit clever about this. So there's going to be so this is where that final 5th pole from the eye, where the change of direction from the skull to the face happens. So that last piece of that pentagon structure of the eye comes into play right now. So ultimately what I'm trying to do is create a loop that goes around the crown of the skull. So you'll see that happen as I sort of fill out this structure. You can see by the way I redirected those faces, those loops are now sort of traveling around that circumference of the skull. And you can see me turning off and on that skin wrap modifier and sort of playing with that, evening out the quads, making sure it's nice and clean and even. Adding another loop around the jawline, using that as a structural loop as well.
Stop it. I think I was about to fall asleep.
And of
Because
course,
this is boring, but I'm fucking
line,
tired.
sure
I'm trying to go for
up.
4 hours. We have 2 more hours to go. I need to
So there's the
fucking...
front of the skull done. Now it's time to do the back. Alright, so I want to make sure that those
Snap
3
out of
spans that
it.
I created, or 4
I
spans
need
that
some
I created that go around
motivation.
the top of the skull, travel in the same direction around to the back. So I don't get any like redirections of faces. that you know, flow around. So I'm making sure that there's a consistency in the front and the back of the skull as well. And you just notice that I also added a change in direction at the back of the skull to be able to, you know, get those loops traveling in a way that I want. And I'm sorry if the video footage is a little bit fast, but if I was playing this at regular speed, we'd be here all day. So if you ever had to look at this and just take a pause, just pause the video, inspect my method here, and then continue on from there. Okay, now that we got that change in direction put in place, I'm just filling in some faces that we can now continue the spans of the top of the skull down to the neck. And obviously, by the look of things, it looks like we have way too many faces going down to the back of the neck. So we'll have to fix that in the future.
Hey, Breeze is back.
So just smoothing that out again, making sure that distribution is nice and clean. As you can see, I'm starting to get some niggles there, so apply that shrink wrap,
Motherfucker, if he
reapply
says it
and
again,
then
I'm
move
gonna
on.
have to slap his ass.
Fix up that center line again, as always. And sometimes the shrink wrap modifier can get in the way of that, so sometimes you just gotta apply that shrink wrap.
Some
and then fix
garbage
it
is
after the fact.
okay.
So apply it, fix up that center line, and then you can bring back that shrink wrap if you want to. Okay, now there's clearly way too much geometry that's going to be traveling down the back of the neck compared to the front, so we need to reduce the amount of geometry that travels down. So to do that, we're going to collapse a few spans into this structure that you see here, similar to the hands actually, and then we're going to delete those extra loops. So we reduce that geometry and effectively clean up the back of the head. And the reason I do this on the top of the skull is
girl, the
because
back of your
the
head
top
is
of the skull
ridiculous.
isn't going to deform or isn't even going to be seen. So having some redirected loops up there aren't really going to affect anything in the long term. And now we can sort of fill up that back of the skull with the right amount of spans. So just count the spans you need to fill it with. Fix that up. And then start off by filling up that center line. And then we have 4 spans at the edge of the ear there. So I'm going to add 4 spans to the side here, the middle. And now I can just grid fill that with the right amount of spans, and we're good to go. Perfect. Nothing too fancy for the back of the head. Alright, let's get that neck up and running. So we got to fix up the bottom of the jaw first, like the flesh underneath the jawbone. So we're going to have that travel around like the jaw is already doing now. And then we'll extrude out the neck after we do that. So just getting that structure in, follow that same edge flow from the front of the jaw there.
This is intense.
Fill that in with the appropriate faces, just like that. Alright. And now we're pretty much ready to extrude out a neck structure. But first I might add a little bit more volume to the base of that skull before I extrude it out. Making sure that's all good to go. So yeah, just adding another loop just around the base of the neck before I extrude out the neck. And of course, this is entirely up to you how you do this. As long as you got that underlying edge flow working, it doesn't really matter. Alright, just smoothing that out now. Just getting that up and running for our neck extrusion. And of course, the neck extrusion is probably the easiest part of this whole process. Just extrude down and then add some spans. once you're happy with that extrusion, just add some spans and then sort of sculpt in, or shrink wrap that again, depending on whether that works. It's up to you. Just get that next shape up and running, and we can move on. So throughout this video, you might notice me applying and then removing and then applying the mirror modifier as well. Sometimes it's useful to apply the mirror modifier so you can smooth out the sculpt on an overall basis, and then sort of delete one half and bring it back. I find that to be a pretty effective way to fix up certain sort of things like the neck and the gap between the eyes. So again, you can see me just cleaning up a few things. I've applied the mirror modifier temporarily, just so I can work through the existing geometry, smooth things out, make sure it's nice and clean. So the distribution of the faces are looking pretty good so far. So now it's time to remove one half of the face, and I'm going to bring back the mirror modifier so I'll continue on the ears and the mouth. So for the mouth, we're just going to pull down the existing geometry for now, just to get it in line with the opening of the lips. So like the eyes, there is a certain point in which I like to make sure that there's a level of symmetry. So there's 4 quadrants involved. So making sure you understand where the corner of the mouth is and where that sits is really important. Choosing the right vertice to represent that is also really important. So a lot of people starting out doing faces almost accidentally extrude the lips out in an incorrect fashion, like almost with a square fashion rather than a loop. So try to avoid that. So now that we've got that structure in place, we can add a few more loops, and just using vertex snapping with or face snapping with the magnet tool, we're just snapping up those lips to get that structure in there. And the lips themselves require quite a bit of volume as well, so don't be afraid to add more loops to the lip structure. They aren't going anywhere, they're just going to be cycling around themselves, so as long as they're not spiraling out of control, you should be fine. And again, I'm adding some vertical loops down the center line of the lips, just so I have some more volume to play with. And again, this is optional for in your case, so it just depends on the kind of design you're working with. And that's the tricky thing about faces.
My design is not going to have any of these. No, not even a little bit.
I can't exactly handhold you through the entire process step by step with every tool.
Can you dick hold me through the entire process?
There are other tools that can make your life easier as well.
Sick of holding my dick on my own.
There's the new polybuild tool that I'm not using in the entirety of this video. So if you find tools that are more comfortable to use, or you want to try something different, go for it. But yeah, going back to the structure of the face, it really depends on the design you're working on. So, that's why it's really important to understand the way that the lip structure works, because at least then you can adapt, the poly building to your own design and understand where the loops lie. So, all things considered, the instructions I gave you at the start when we analyzed our mesh at the beginning before we built it is actually more important than this process of me showing you how to actually build it. So, understand the concept before you jump into the execution. But enough of that. Going back into the modeling process, you may have noticed that I actually deleted some faces at the top of the ear hole. So I actually deleted some faces to give me some more geometry to play with when I extruded. So I extruded out the ear shape, and now in a very basic kind of way, I'm just shaping out the ear based on that extrusion. And it looks kind of Shrekky at the moment, but that will be solved momentarily as we start to optimize the geometry. So I'm just selecting the faces on the bottom and top of the ear and just flattening those out, because I plan on grid filling that like so. So just selecting everything there. And this is why having symmetry is so important, because now I can just grid fill and have no issues with that process. So I'm now just repositioning that ear to match the orthographic views as much as I can. And I'm also adapting from the sculpt and the orthographic view at this point, because the shrink wrap tool with stuff like ears and eyes and mouths, it doesn't work very well with that method. So now it's really about modeling by eye rather than relying on the sculpt. I'm adding a few loops to the ear structure along the vertical to sort of add some more volume. And this is not the only way to build the ear, mind you. I mean, if you got something more realistic in mind or something like that, this method might not work for you. So really studying.
I don't
how
have
you can break
ears
down
on my
that,
shit, so it's gonna
extrusion
work
and the way you build out those
fine.
loops is really important when it comes to ear. And I will admit, I had to construct
bitch
this
is
ear about 3
fine,
times before I got something that I liked.
fine.
And yeah, it could be a real pain in the ass. I think the ears are probably the hardest part of the entire process, to be honest. So now I'm just trying to work out the process in which I want to get the inner ear up and running. So I'm going to select these faces of the inner ear and then inset them a little bit, so I have some extra geometry to play with. But we run into an issue. We get a 6 star at the corner of the ear, and for some people this would be fine, but for me, I can't stand the idea of having them, so I'm going to redirect some of that geometry. So I'm merging at the edge of that extrusion or that inset some verts, and then I'm going to delete that new line of edges that we created with that insetting. And then it's just a matter of redirecting the edge flow of the upper and lower ear to flow into the rest of the mesh. I mean, this probably isn't the best way of doing it, but for me it was the cleanest way of doing it. So I'm trying to make sure that the edge flow of the upper and lower extra edges are keeping that mouth symmetry up and running. So now I'm just redirecting some flow with the knife tool to make sure that all works out. So I've eliminated that that 6th edge star, and I've also effectively added enough geometry to the ear that I can start working on adding some volume to that ear on the inside.
Okay.
Now it's just a matter of first cleaning up the extra geometry that I added to the cheeks and the mouth. So I'll probably sculpt those out and smooth them out in a second. So yeah, just fixing up that alignment of edges so that's all consistent and clean from the top and bottom. So it's a bit of a process just to smooth that out, redistribute those faces a little bit.
Oh no, guys!
Yep, bringing back those cheeks.
I don't know.
Alright, so now on to the ear again. And because my approach for this ear is fairly stylistic, my method is also going to be pretty simple. So I'm just going to select some faces that I want to
it's
get
not
the inside of the
too
ear
bad
up and
yet.
running. And then I'm going to sort of
super
basically
fucking tired.
just extrude out some faces to get that inner ear up and running. So that little bit that I haven't selected becomes a little lobe of the inside of the ear. And then I just basically work with that geometry to get the shape that I want, and smoothing and adding some loops on the inner ear to get that smoothness the way I want. And that's about it for this ear. Very simple sort of structure. But if you're going for a realistic ear, this is probably the worst method you can go for. So again, depends on your design. So do the research, find the right edge flow, and do your best to get the result you want. And yeah, I mean, honestly, there could be a whole video series just on retopoing the ear alone. So just think about that when it comes to designing your own characters. So just be aware. Now that I've got enough geometry, it's just a matter of just sculpting that, that shape of the ear to the style that I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. That's good.
So yeah, just a quick little loop inspection, making sure everything's up and running and good to go. So as you can see, not much in terms of complexity in the loops. And this one I found kind of interesting because it loops in the exact same way from the bottom lip to the bottom of the eyelid, so it actually terminates in the same spot respectively. You can see we have the loops in the lips up and running, perfectly structured. We got the loops around the eyes, exactly how we described it at the start of the video. So now we're at the end game here. We just have to add some eyelid structure and some inner mouth structure. So yeah, not that far from done. And making the eyelids have more structure is pretty simple. Just extrude out an edge loop into the eye socket basically. And then you can repeat that a few times just to make sure that strength of the structure is there. But that's all there is to it. Very simple. And some people like to actually merge these edges into a star at the back of the eye, but I hate doing that, so fuck that. And again, this is an optional thing. I like to splay out the back of the edges to sort of have a sort of cleft on the inside of the eye. Just helps maintain some volume, I find. If you're going for a realistic eye, you most likely have to think about more edge loop structure stuff around the corners of the eye, like the tear ducts and stuff like that. So be aware about that if you plan on doing some realistic character design.
I don't.
So now it's on to the mouth bag, as they call it. So basically we're going to simulate the inside of the mouth with you know, extruding out a sort of bag-like structure for the inner lip. So I'm just extruding out some faces to get that inner lip structure up and running. And it's really important that we have this because it helps maintain the volume of the lips when they open and close during animation.
Feeling good, huh? Come hang out or what? I know him love getting his shoulders rubbed, huh?
So just playing with the verts now, trying to get the sort
Oh,
of
he's
fleshiness up and
purring.
running
He's
around
purring,
that
that means
inside of
him
the lip.
like it.
And then we're going to extrude out a series of faces that sort of end up terminating as a sort of, you know, a mouth bag basically.
Mama don't carry him like that. Mama carries him like this, but the Dabber can't rub his shoulders if him do that. I love you, How. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me.
So now that I've got that overall lip structure out the way on the inside of the lip,
You want to get
it's
on the
time to
desk?
extrude.
You do. I just want to check out what's in that chicken box. Huh? You know there's chicken nuggets in there.
And
Don't
because we're
knock this
effectively
over.
recreating the
There's
the
nothing
throat
up there,
of the
Bubbers. There's
character,
chicken nuggets, but
we
him
want to
cannot
have
get
some
in there.
extra, sort of
What are him
cabin
thinking? You
for the
leaving?
tongue and the teeth to sit
Don't
inside
leave.
once we get around to modeling those. And that will be in another
Motherfucker
video.
only loves me when I have food. Fucking animals.
And I'm following the curvature of the neck a little bit, and I'm just going to terminate it just at the top of the throat, because, you know, obviously you don't need to go that far.
Mouth bag. It's so fucking weird.
Now I'm just turning back on the mirror modifier, and then I'm just going to clean up a few things, make sure there's no, you know, intersections or anything like that, just like we always did throughout this video. Clean all that up, and yeah, then move on. And now before I finish up mirroring this object, I'm just going to clean up some mesh stuff, make sure the distribution of faces is nice and clean. throughout the model, and just avoid any fuck-ups. And you can see I've probably fucked up one bit there from a few attempts at mirroring, so I have to fix that up in the future. But for now, just cleaning up that mouth bag, sculpting that down, getting the roundness in there. I mean, that's just me being pedantic. You don't have to do that, but you know, it's useful sometimes. And now, with that mirror modifier applied, I'm going to grid fill that throat. Make sure you got the grid fill working properly so you don't get any spiraling. And that's the face done in a nutshell. Now it's just a matter of just a bit of polish, adding lips where you need it, and yeah, just cleaning things up as we go. And let's just bring back our original model with all those notes written all over the face, and let's inspect it in comparison with our newly made model. And look at that, all those loops that we talked about at the start of the video are all present.
They're there.
The loop around the nose and the chin, the lips, the 5 points of the change in direction around the eyes, the meshed structure along the cheek, and the span or the loop that goes around the entirety of the face. It's all there. And this is why having a firm understanding of the principles of edge flow for the face are so important. Okay, the final part, attaching the head to the body. So, pretty simple affair, I guess you can say. I mean, there's some planning involved, but that's alright. So first thing I'm going to do is erase or delete the neck as it was on my original base mesh for the body. I've also extended it down a little bit further so I have a wider hole to work with.
Oh
Smooth that
shit!
out a little bit, so now we have
Gotta get those wide holes to work with if you're packing, you know.
that sort of clavicle shape going on. Extrude up to get the base of our neck up and running. And now it's time to join the head to the body.
The world is my oyster.
Select the head, select the body, Control J, and that will join it together. Alright. So first thing I want to do is, again, I want to bring back the mirror modifier. So we have only half the work to do. And then the second thing, I'm going to add a few spans down the center line of the body. See how useful it is? And I'm sure some of you didn't believe that it would be so important, but there we are. Alright, so first we're going to merge the front and the back of the neck. So we know that at least that center line is working across the entire body.
Oh yeah, look at that center line.
Just a little bit, so in case we merge again, and you know, I don't want those things.
Remember, boys and girls, clean up your crotch a little bit in case you merge again. You don't want to be merging with a dirty crotch. Just gonna go ahead and say that right now. You heard it from Dikko first, but you're hearing it repeated from me. Clean the crotch up a little bit before you merge again. No dirty crotch merging. That's how you get yeast infections.
To merge on itself because of that clipping attribute we have with the mirror modifier. Alright, so that's all good. Alright, so continuing on to the neck, we're going to merge the center line of our arm down the center line of our neck, so we have it travel up the neck down the center.
What are you trying to tell me?
Like so.
You guys
Okay, so here comes the tricky part. So obviously at the base of our neck we
cats are
have way
fucking
more
the bane
edges
of
than
my
we have
existence.
at the top of our shoulders. So we need to actually figure out how to reduce the amount of edges at the base of our neck there. And we have a similar problem at the front of the neck, but the solutions for the front and the back are different. So at the front of the neck, we're going to redirect some edges to flow around the base of the neck and then back up the neck to the face. The nice thing about that method is also it kind of simulates the muscles between the neck as well, which is kind of nifty. I mean, it's not fully accurate, but it does the job. So you can see there, I just extruded a change in direction there. So that will allow me to get that redirection of faces down around the neck. Fill up that edge there. And look at that. Grid fill, and we're good to go. So we're pretty lucky with the amount of difference there at the front. So the back is a little bit more different. There's way more edges at the top than there is at the bottom. So what we need to do is collapse some edges. So similar to what we did at the top of the skull, we're going to merge 3 spans and then delete 2 spans at the bottom there. Count our edges, count the top and bottom, see if it's all working. No, we need to actually reduce it further at the top of the neck. So we're going to do that once more to reduce those spans. Select those 2 spans at the bottom, and now we have a nice clean amount to work with. So if we fill that in now, we should be pretty lucky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done. Yes. So that's about it. Now it's just a matter about cleaning up the distribution of those faces, making sure it's nice and simple, quad structure, nicely distributed and looking appealing. So the neck needs a little bit of work, sculpting that neck a little bit. I applied the mirror modifier in this case, so it made it a little bit easier to sculpt. And especially those spans down the middle of the body now, we need to redistribute those a little bit, make sure they're evened out along the back and the front of the body. But this is pretty much the end here. I think we're pretty close to done. Just, you know, adding volume where necessary, of course. Because we've added more geometry down the middle of the body, so it's time to clean that up a little bit. Redistribute those vertices along the back. And that should be plenty enough geometry there to sort of add some sort of volume to the back as well. So, you know, take some time to modify the back and, you know, fill it in, sculpt it out, you know, get the shape you want. And again, I'm doing the same thing for the neck as we speak. And the neck looks a bit long, so I might bring that head down a little bit. But otherwise, we're good to go. And here's a little test with Mixamo.
Look at
Obviously, Mixamo doesn't do face animation, but it can animate the head a little bit. Alright, so in about, what, an hour's worth of tutorializing, we've gone from a headless Jack to a person with eyes, ears, mouth.
Yeah, it's so fucking cool.
And that can be animated and rigged now. Look at that. Ah. She's dancing, she's dancing. And that's how you retopo a head in a nutshell. I know it's going to be frustrating the first time you do it. You're going to run into different kinds of problems, and you'll have to problem solve on the go.
You'll have to problem solve.
I think you can pull it off, and I'm looking forward to what you achieve. So, until then, catches and have fun.
Okay, that was 6. What is 7? Modeling polygon hair. Again, I don't need to do the hair. I don't need to do clothes. Extra bit. So 23 minutes. 16. Oh, this one's only 16 minutes and 23 minutes. So there's like an hour. And then what about 10? Where was 10 at? I've seen 10 like several times. There it is. It's 24 minutes.
G'day everyone, Dikko here with another kick-ass walkthrough. This is part 7 of a multi-part series covering modeling for animation. So in the previous video, we kind of wrapped up the body. We've polished up the face, we've retopoed it, So now it's time to move on to the hair. And the thing about modeling hair or creating hair for 3D characters is that there's an infinite amount of ways to do it, and everyone has their own approach. And as you can see, here's what I have made earlier. So clearly my approach today is a non-realistic look, and it's going to rely on poly modeling to create the bulk of the hair. And obviously I have a few tricks up my sleeve to make life easier, but overall it's not a complicated affair. The actual complications come from understanding how hair flows, the direction in which it sits on the head, and stuff like that.
Oh, that was a good one. That was a good one.
Again, this is not something that you can learn overnight or in one day. It just takes practice. So I'm going to start with the ponytails or the pigtails, and I'm going to use a Bezier curve to shape out the actual pigtail part of the hair. So I'm just going to line up that Bezier curve with, obviously the Beziers. And then I'm going to create a bevel on that using the curve settings to get it nice and thick in the same way that the drawing is representing the pigtail. Okay, within edit mode of that curve, you can change the weight of each point so it tapers according to the so-called radius of that point. And that's done by pressing Alt-S and dragging. And you can change that radius in a larger number or a smaller number according to what you need.
Oh,
and I've just subdivided that pigtail line to have another point in the center so I can add that thickness where necessary.
That was nuts. Thought I heard
And
something.
there's not much I can say else beyond this point until we get to adding more detail. So I'm just going to time-lapse me editing this little curve just to show you the kind of considerations that you need to make as you work on it, because hair may look simple, but really it's not. It's both chaotic and ordered, and it has a pattern to it. So, it just takes a lot of moving around things, shifting things, scaling things, all that sort of shit that takes time to do. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Alright, so once you're happy with whatever you're doing with your hair, we can actually add some more detail to this thing with another curve that will be used as a bevel profile. So we're going to add a simple circle curve object. And then we're going to jump into edit mode, and we're going to actually edit the curve to suit the pattern of the circumference of our hair, if that makes sense. So you'll see what happens as I edit this object. So the pattern I'm about to create will actually become the circumference profile of our Bezier's bevel. And this pattern can be whatever you want it to be according to the design that you're working on. Be creative and just try something that you want to, experiment with. So it's really up to you. Don't have to follow exactly what I'm doing. Just make a cool pattern with a circular curve. And the nice thing about this method is that it's non-destructive. So if you apply this curve object to your hair curve, you can still edit it after the fact. So don't be too afraid of, playing with the shapes and then editing it after the fact. It's not a be-all and end-all affair. And I just want to stress, this is not the only method to follow. I mean, this is just one method I use, not the only method. So if you find something that you prefer to do, just do that. I mean, there is no right or wrong way here. Not only that, there are a ton of different plugins to help make hair. So if you want to make something that's a little bit more realistic or more flowy, then yeah, maybe this approach isn't the exact one you need to do. But I will say that if you're just starting out as a modeler doing characters, especially stylized characters, and you are planning on going down the realistic hair route, that is an ultra tricky affair to go down, because not only is it infinitely more complex to do realistic hair, computationally speaking, it's also a massive hit on your system. There are also other considerations to make when you're thinking about doing realistic hair, like animation. So not only do you have to animate it, you might have to simulate it, or if you're not going to simulate it, you need to animate it so it looks as realistic as the render itself. And then of course there's the rendering, which is also a massive performance hit on the final result. So rendering good realistic hair is also a massive undertaking.
What is wrong?
So I'm not trying to discourage you from trying it. What I am saying though is really take the
want
time to
mama to
understand
come
how it works
over.
and really study it,
Whatever.
because yeah, you can't do realistic hair
I have no
overnight.
fucking
It's
idea what
just
he's
a
doing.
massive
I
learning
just
curve.
completely zoned
And you
out.
may have noticed I'm talking about this stuff because right now I'm really not doing all that much with my screen here. I'm just editing that profile still, and you can see why I said it just takes time to do hair. It's just really understanding and trying to figure out the pattern that you want and understanding the design that you're working towards. And again, here we go, we're finally done. I'm going to add that curve to my Bezier. As you can see, it's a complete mess, but there's an easy solution to that problem. We're just going to scale down that curve in edit mode. So in edit mode, scale down that curve, make sure that you got the right
No,
origin
we used to
point
do
set
shit like
up,
this in
and then scale
Maya.
it down. And
That's right. Or you draw like a fucking curve and then like extrude along a curve, or oh, interesting. I'll have to rewatch
then
this
it will
whenever
match
if I ever need to do
that
it.
Bezier profile. So as you can see, we've got that nice sort of stylized hair pattern going on with that profile. And I will say this before I move on, I'm not going to be using this method throughout the entire hair modeling process. Eventually I will be getting to more traditional means of sort of blocking out the top of the hair. This is really useful for ponytails, little strands of hair, stuff like that you're working on. But for the bulk of the hair, you may have to try something a little bit different, or you can actually use this. It's just up to you how you approach it. So again, try and be a bit experimental with your approach. So I want to get a bit of a spiraling effect on that pigtail there. So I can do that by pressing the points on my curve here and pressing Control T. And that will allow you to sort of spin those points enough that you can get that sort of tapering, curvy effect going on. There's also a direct tool in the toolbox there on the side in edit mode. So you can actually use the tool set there as well if you don't know the keyboard shortcut. And here's a bit of a time lapse of getting those pigtails up and running.
Fuck, I'm scrolling
Now,
on
you might be wondering
Instagram.
why
Stop,
I'm
get
not
off,
giving
get
you
off,
a
get off, get off, get off,
blow-by-blow
get off.
breakdown on how I'm making this hair. I'm working toward a design that's very specific to this drawing. So this method that I'm doing here, it may or may not work for you. So it really depends on your design. And because I don't know your design and what you're planning on doing, and I expect that you would have something a little bit different to mine, I encourage you to think a little bit more experimentally and treat it as an active learning session rather than just copying what I'm doing here. Because not only will the style of your hair be different, i.e. poly modeling hair strips or hair particles, the actual style of your hair will be different. When I say style, I'm talking about the way that you've made the hair. So ponytails, fringes, could be a dude's haircut, could be something like that. The approach would be completely different than what I'm doing here. So you got to think a little bit more out of the box and a bit more like it's a puzzle to be solved rather than something that can be just copied straight out of the box. And you may see here, I'm actually editing that that profile on that large ponytail or pigtail. I'm actually playing with the proportions of my little pattern there and just trying to break it up a little bit. As you can see, it's non-destructive. So getting into the bulk of the hair on the top there, you can see I'm actually just using polygons to block out the shape here. And I forgot to record the start here, but you know, it's not exactly, you know, rocket science. I've basically extruded a tube of quads to sort of travel down the back of the head to that ponytail region. And I said this before in a few videos back, if you've already managed to model an entire body, extruding a few quads ain't gonna be a challenge.
True.
And as you can see in the time lapse here, I'm just shaping those quads to sort of fit the flow of the hair according to my illustration. So it's really important to have good reference in this case. And shaping the hair could take hours, like literally hours to do. It's weird enough to say this, but sometimes making the hair for me takes...
It's actually so good because like all of this shit, like yeah, it's good to know, it's good to see the process. I'm like want to watch it all the way, but like I don't even need any of this shit. Not doing a head, not doing a face, not doing ears, not doing hair.
Takes longer than actually modeling the body. So I've just added a subdivision modifier to the hair just to get some extra shape in there, and you can see that it looks a lot smoother now just with those simple geometry. And again, start simple and then work in the complexity. But what I want to show you is how you can get those sharp edges that I have in the final result there. So without adding any extra geometry, we can actually assign certain edges to have a crease. So if we assign them with a crease value, you can see it's sharpening up that subdivision so we can get that right profile. This is great for hard surface modeling, but it's also great for creating stylized hair such as this. So again, I'm going to select these edges along the side of the hair. So I can select any edge loop I want, but in this case, I'm going to select these very specific ones. And then again, Shift E, and then drag, and you can kind of get that hard edge look. It looks really cool. And again, it's not adding any extra geometry, it's just working with what's already there, and it's just manipulating that subdivision modifier a little bit to sort of determine where the distribution of those subdivided polygons go. And you can see on the side there with my backup how different that profile looks with the edge creases being assigned to those pieces. And to save a little bit of work, I'm just mirroring what I've got, and I'm just flipping those normals, making sure that's all good, and then just manipulating the same kind of geometry to match the flow of my illustration. And one of the tricky things about here is getting that right silhouette, not just from the front of the face, but from the back, sides, and basically any angle that you're going to be looking at this character from. So be aware of that as well. Know where where your characters are going to lie, how they're going to be shown on the screen, and really model the hair to make sure it looks appealing from all angles. And one of the most overlooked parts, for me especially, is the back of the hair and how the hair actually joins at the back. Because hair has a very specific kind of flow to it, and there are some patterns to follow, and it's worth researching that stuff according to whatever you're making. And again, you can tell here, I'm not doing anything particularly fancy. I'm really just modeling with polygons. It's even more basic than the actual modeling of the body. Just extrusions and tubes, basically. And again, this is not the only way you can approach this. If you wanted to, you can do the entire hair
That is true.
using that Bezier curve method, and you probably have a good time doing it. But for me, I find that, sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to work with when you're working with big chunks like this, so I'd like to have a bit more control. But for you, in your case, it may be completely different. And I'm just putting in the sides of the hair now, just making sure there's enough, volume in there to fill out the bulk of the head.
Ooh.
One of the challenges you face when modeling hair is getting lost in the minutiae of the details. So sometimes you can start putting in too much detail too quickly, or you may end up straying too far away from the original design that you just have to start removing stuff. So in this case, I've become to realize that I've been putting too much strands on the side of the hair that I'm actually losing a lot of the silhouette that I had in my original sketch. So eventually I start, sort of cleaning things up and making sure it sort of stays within the shape of the original sketch. Like right now, as I'm modeling it, you can see I'm having the hair sort of swooping downwards toward the ear, where in actual fact it should be swooping upwards toward the top of the head. So again, I'm just starting to realize that and fix that up as I go. So being aware at all angles is really important. And another thing to be aware of is that hair generally is not symmetrical at all. So, having a certain wave of hair that swoops toward the left or right is always going to look more natural and realistic, even in a cartoon character, than having a completely symmetrical hair design. So be aware of that when you're designing your characters, be aware of that when you're designing your hair as well, that even if you have a symmetrical sort of pattern, so in this case the two pigtails, the hair wouldn't flow in a symmetrical manner that is so precise. And that's why I have, the hair flowing from left to right in different ways. And obviously you can get away with that in certain points. So for instance, the bottom of the hair where, you kind of are stretching the hair, you can kind of get away with some symmetry there. Little, strands on the sides, you can probably get away with that as well, as long as they're not obviously
Dude,
next
this
to each
guy's a
other. You can probably get away with
fucking
some symmetry.
maniac.
Adding some hair bands to the pigtails now, and again, super simple, just a torus object that's duplicated with different thicknesses. I'm not even going to bother making it actually wrap around like a real hair tie. What's the point of that where no one is going to notice that? So once you're completely happy with your hair design and are ready to get ready for texturing in the future, it's time to convert the curve objects into meshes. So just right click and press convert to mesh. But before you do that, make sure that your curve objects aren't overly subdivided in the resolution preview settings, because you don't want to deal with too many polygons just in the hair alone. So make sure you manage that down, bring it down to 2 or 3 and you should be good to go. And you can find that in the curve option settings on the side panel there with the properties. And you're good to go. And now it's all about just cleaning up a few things here and there, fill up any gaps that need to be filled, and yeah. And once you're finally happy with your hair design, you can slap on a couple of materials and you'll be ready to roll. So yeah, a brisk 15-minute tutorial, a nice reprieve from the almost hour-long facial retopo tutorial that was posted last week. So yeah, take the time, experiment, play with different tools, study the way that hair flows around the scalp, use lots of reference where you can, and just have fun. So in the next video, it's all going to be about adding clothing to this person, finally. And that's a much simpler process than you might think. So
That's good.
Until then, catches and have fun.
Catch us later, bro. Okay, so that was 7. We have 8, 9, and 10 left. I think is the total series. I think it ends at 10. I mean, he has other videos, obviously. I don't think we're gonna continue. I'm pretty tired. I'm like losing focus. So what I think we'll do here is go ahead and end the stream. I appreciate everybody for hanging out. Loving the support. Loving all my peoples. We're still struggling to get our average viewers up, but I mean, it is what it is. I think tomorrow is Thursday. We'll probably get to where we start modeling tomorrow. We'll watch, like, we have another hour and a half of videos left. 8, 9, and 10 are about 30 minutes a piece. They're a little under, but with how much I pause, it'd probably be like 30 minutes a piece. So hour and a half in. I'm gonna try to work towards getting to like at least 4 hours per weekday, but I'd like to do like 5 to 6 hours per weekday. It's just a lot to ask working a full-time job, because that's like 8 hours plus 5 hours is 13 hours. I'm supposed to be sleeping for 8 hours, so we're at 21. That literally leaves us with 3 hours of free time per day. And it's like, there's so fucking much to do. Like, driving to and from work eats into that. Eating eats into that. Getting ready for work eats into that. There's just like not enough fucking time in the day. Let alone the fact that I'm working more than 8 hours at work right now. Yeah, it's just kind of fucking nuts. So we're going to keep at it. I'm loving where we're headed. I think as long as we keep doing what we're doing, the follower count's going to go up. The viewer count, I don't really know. I think we need to start doing things that people like to watch if we're going to fuck with the viewer count. Or get like, some committed viewers that are like in here every stream. But regardless, yeah, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back live tomorrow. June 12th is a big date because, so I've been streaming every day since December 5th, 2020, except I missed a single day. June 12th, 2021, I did not stream that day. So I technically haven't consecutively streamed every day for a year and a half. However, on June 12th, I will have successfully streamed consecutively for an entire year. So pretty cool. It'll be about a year and a half, missing one day. So a year is like 365 days. Half of that's like 180. If you combine the two, we're looking at like 540 days. So we're like already over 500 days of streaming in a row, minus the one day. So it's like, 99% is, I think, a pretty good consistency factor to go by. Obviously, some of my streams have been like 1 hour streams on days where I'm like getting home super late. I don't feel very well. Yada yada yada. The house gets listed. We put the for sale sign up Saturday. Showings start on Monday, and we have no idea how fast it's gonna sell, but it could possibly sell super fast. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. Nevertheless, again, appreciate all the support. We're gonna keep trying to like work on our social media presence and our networking stuff. So maybe we'll pull some viewers that way. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. I appreciate it. I can't tell you guys how much it means to me that I keep getting the support like I do. So keep that up. Keep me motivated. I'll be here and make sure that you guys are getting what you want. For at least the next month, it looks like. I'll be fucking with modeling and animating and rigging my character. But once we get past that, we'll get back into playing video games as it was meant to be. But we'll have like really cool assets for the stream, right? We'll be able to do so fucking much. It'll be nutty indeed. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for me tonight. Until tomorrow, have a wonderful day.